structure and flexibility. The RP Diet app builds a structure of eating that creates the results you're looking for, but has the flexibility to let you scan your favorite foods and follow your preferred diet philosophy. The digital diet coach in your pocket is more powerful than ever, so let's build a better you with the RP Diet app.
Folks, welcome back to the weekly webinar. Dr. James, Dr. Mike, here to answer your questions. Let's get right to it, eh?
Hey, all right, let's see who's up first. Anton. Two Antons. Anton says, hi, would it be advisable for optimal for hypertrophy to replace the back squat with open-end trap bar squatting, assuming a full range of motion is performed from the stand? I know not many like this idea, but I don't understand why. Mark Ripito hates the trap bar, but I wonder what you think. On my trap bar, the open side is as heavy as the closed side, and the center of mass is exactly in the axis of the weight carrier in the middle of the grip. Thanks. Well, so my first suspicion is that if you are interested in targeting the quads, then you're looking for essentially two things: ability to draw a mind-muscle connection / overload the target tissue, and two, make sure there's as little muscle limiting factors or degrees of freedom in between you and the target quad. So for example, high bar squats are pretty good because you can get like a really rigid posture, and your back doesn't really, there's not a lot of degree of declination of your back. So your back tends to not limit you much there. And so you get great transfer, and it's really easy to get a good technique to feel your quads a lot and impose a lot of stimulus on them. So it checks both boxes. Leg press, same idea, except leg press even, maybe a little bit less stimulative, but fewer limiting factors. So it's really just as good as the squat, especially if you do it right, full range of motion. Hack squat's great for, again, those reasons. Something that James likes to do often, in which I do when I get my hands on it. Belt squat is really, really interesting because sometimes it's a little bit awkward for balance and maybe you don't get as good of a stimulus, but it's got zero axial fatigue, which is incredible, and you can just beat your legs up. So it definitely checks, one of the boxes a little less, one of the boxes a lot more, and it's still good. My issue with using essentially deadlifts with a full range of motion for the quads, which is good, is the problem of your grip is a limiting factor, your traps are a limiting factor, and because the way you hold your bar, you're going to start rounding over your back at some point, and that will become a limiting factor. The movement itself tends to be more axially loading from the get-go because you can't just position the bar on your traps easily and let it sit there. The mind-muscle connection is going to be worse because you're thinking about other shit like gripping and holding a bar. So even though the range of motion is good and an external perspective is good, you're reducing if we're counting joints, let's say we count the back as half because you get half more involvement, one half shoulder joint, elbow joint because there's bicep stuff, like your biceps could get tired, and then a grip, we're adding 3.5 degrees of freedom to what otherwise is 0 for the squat and -1 for the leg press. So it's one of those things where it's an interesting idea on paper, and if you do it and you have success with it, like you actually feel your quads, you're not feeling limited by anything else, I think it's a fine variation to throw in there. I would just be very careful about axial fatigue, systemic fatigue, and if it's one of the things where you nominally say it hits your quads, but someone's like, so what do you get sore after that? You're like, well, quads don't get sore, my traps get really fried. You're like, okay, so what do you really think you're training if your traps get sore but your quads don't, right, James?
Yeah, so I'm like 75% with you on that one. So I've used the trap bar. I've programmed it a lot. I don't find that the axial fatigue is all that much different because usually it's it's loaded basically right down the middle. I mean, so grips can be a limiting thing. I haven't found the traps to be a limiting thing for a lot of people or posture to be a limiting thing. But I think where you run into some benefits and risk is with anthropometry, where if you have somebody who's like Dr. Mike and he's built to be a strong squatter, right now he's got to hold, 400 pounds plus in his hands to get the amount of weight.
I ran into all those issues.
Yeah, so I think there's some differences in sizes and builds. So if you have somebody like me who's tall and not a super strong squatter, I think you can get a little bit more out of that particular exercise, especially if you have strong grip. But yeah,
and if you have a shorter torso and longer femurs.
Yeah, definitely. So I think it's more of it's not an inherently good or bad exercise. I think it's just built better for some people and worse for others. So I mean, it's ultimately is it a squat or a deadlift? It's kind of somewhere in between, right? It's just a knee extension, hip extension type movement where that's just loaded a little bit differently. So what I usually recommend is don't substitute that out completely for a standard squat or more of a more standard deadlift variation, but it's a good one to do some, believe it or not, some higher reps and get some volume in, because you can use a moderately challenging weight. So like for me right now, I actually have it in on my kind of like one of my more moderate quad days where I'll do sets of like between 10 and 15, and it's awful. But I actually can't do sets of 10 and 15 that consistently on the squat because of the way my build is and my back just gets tired. So it works for me. Definitely wouldn't work for Mike because he's a lot stronger in the leg. Well, he's just stronger than me, period, but he's particularly in the legs. So you can imagine, like, if you identify more on the short and stocky side, it's probably not great for you. If you're more like me, more Gumby build, might be okay. So pros and cons.
You got to know just know what you're looking for. Remember that stimulus to fatigue ratio. Make sure that your quads are what's getting hit. Like James will do these and his quads will blow up. His grip is fine. His traps are fine. Back is fine. But if you find yourself, you're like, man, I'm just kind of picking this up and using my glutes and my back, and I think my quads are working. Man, it's not a quad exercise anymore. It's not a limiting factor for the quads. Still a quad exercise. Very poor stimulus to fatigue ratio, and you're not going to be able to push your quads as hard as you want them to be pushed.
Oh, and just one more note on that SFR thing. The one thing that you can do a lot with squats that you cannot do with the trap bar is like foot position and foot angle, right? Because you're stuck in that little cube thing. So, if you're like me, you're tall and you're probably wide, but that's kind of a problem because you're inside the stupid square and you actually can't spread out that much. Whereas with the squat, you can take a really comfortable foot angle or foot placement to really get a good SFR out of it. Whereas the trap bar, you're a little bit more limited. You can make it work, but that's definitely a downside on that.
Yeah. All right. All the way from Finland is Erno Toivonen. Hey, hi, Mr. Doctors. Work has been interfering a lot in me being able to follow up with your podcast, but I just managed to binge watch the latest podcasts, and I'm able to ask questions again. First, an improvement idea for RP Plus: make a FAQ bot on RP Plus site, which should help people find videos or articles easily regarding various topics. As you mentioned on previous podcasts, you guys have so much content here that might even counteract its purpose, in my opinion. Too much info makes people get lost, and instead they ask you something directly, which has been answered in depth, some article or video. It's a really good idea. We'd have to have the bandwidth to get someone to actually go through and catalog everything.
Yeah, but that's actually a good suggestion because doing the bot is not that hard. I mean, like Andrew made a bot in our Slack chat. You know what I mean? Just goof like in 30 seconds.
Just find stuff. Yeah, we would have to
go. It's cataloging, which is the bigger issue. Like
the cataloging is tough, but definitely a really good idea. So thank you so much. Okay, question 1A. You mentioned on a podcast a few weeks ago how someone with low aerobic fitness might also have low systemic MRV because of it, or just in general. Regular hypertrophy workout might be too taxing systemic-wise than it normally should be, for example, getting out of breath during squat, etc. I presume improving aerobic fitness would impede hypertrophy workout, so one would need to, but hypertrophy workout on the back burner and shift the focus on aerobic workouts. Am I right? Well, so what we generally tend to say is for folks in that situation, high-volume hypertrophy work actually improves your fitness over time. Mm-hmm. And in addition to that, I'm just going to go ahead and say this, take it for what you will. 9 times out of 10, if not more, probably more, those guys that are in that position are just over fat and unathletically over fat. Typical sort of West Side powerlifter from back in the day, like 35% body fat, and man, 5's your cardio. Like, yeah, that's because you're a fat piece of shit. Like, if you're, in remotely decent shape, it shouldn't be a problem for you. And certainly after 8 to 12 weeks of hypertrophy training with higher volumes, and maybe progressively getting less fat, you're going to be able to do almost all the hypertrophy work you want and not really be limited by anything else. And as soon as you start saying, well, I'm going to need to do aerobic work, James and I have talked about this in a variety of our books, you're essentially I don't know what kind of analogy works best here, but you're essentially using, I'll put it this way, you need a fire, you have a campsite, you have some wood around it, and you're saying, we're running out of wood. We have to find more wood. Let's make this fire brighter and find more wood. Well, you're burning the very wood that you're using to make the fire brighter. It's just going to make your problem essentially the same. So if you're powering aerobic fitness up in order to get better hypertrophy, you're going to mute hypertrophy response, but be able to get more of it. So you're almost prescribing yourself more training. If you like to train a lot, get into excellent cardio shape. You could train all day and still get the same growth or worse. So it's kind of a dog eating its own tail thing. James?
Yeah. So, I mean, here's kind of a bigger conundrum you run into is like, okay, should I be adding cardio so that I can do more hypertrophy stuff? 99% of the time, the answer is no, because you have a specificity violation to your training. Like if your outcome is to do hypertrophy stuff and get larger, cardio is definitely just going to start causing interference with that to some degree. The more you do, the worse it will get. So in that case, I think it's not a bad idea to add some cardio, but not as putting hypertrophy on the back burner, bringing up your cardio to a point and then doing these like drastic switches, right? It's like I'm doing 95% hypertrophy and I've identified that I'm kind of out of shape. Okay, so maybe now I'm doing like 87.5% hypertrophy and bringing my cardio up a little bit, right? And then it will just over time kind of work itself out. Once you're in shape, you maintain the shape really easily, and then you can actually just drop out the cardio and go back to doing mostly hypertrophy stuff.
Just really, honestly, just do more volume slowly and do less of everything else.
Yeah.
All right, number 1B, I currently do the male physique template with 4 workouts and full body focus. So in my case, instead do 2 full body workouts per week and do 2 or 3 aerobic workouts on the side. It's 3 aerobic workouts, for example, 30 minutes, less enough to improve aerobic fitness. So no, first of all, it's not in any meaningful sense for someone who's already well trained. And second of all, it won't transfer very well to your lifting. The best way to get good at high repetition, high volume lifting, high number of sets, is to do slowly but surely, incrementally more of it, and occasionally deal and repeat, and also get leaner, period. So if someone said to me, hey, listen, like I'm really out of shape for hypertrophy training, what should I do? You should just keep doing hypertrophy training, and you will eventually get 2 great things. All of the muscle gains coming your way, and in better hypertrophy shape. It's a self-solving problem. But here's how it doesn't get self-solved. Guys will say, listen, I only train like 2 or 3 times a week, and I'm over fat. How do I get better at hypertrophy training? Well, you train 4 or 5 times a week, higher volumes, maybe not an hour at a time, an hour and a half. Work your way up to an hour and a half of training at a time and get leaner. And they're like, well, I can't do either one of those things. What should I do? Should I do cardio? And you're like, you don't have the bandwidth for sure for cardio if you're asking questions like that. So more hypertrophy work.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Mike on this one. So 3 aerobic workouts per week is good enough to improve like basic cardiovascular fitness from like a health perspective. But what Mike has said is also true. It's not enough to really transfer a huge amount into hypertrophy training. And at that point, the answer is just more training.
Yeah. More training gets you both the added fitness improvement and direct benefit. Like it's a win-win. Whereas cardio gets you a direct cost, small cost, and an indirect, not as good performance benefit. So.
Yeah. So there might be some incentives to do those 3 aerobic workouts for health promoting reasons. Certainly we could go that route, but not for hypertrophy promoting reasons necessarily.
1C, would it be smart to spread out the aerobic workouts, for example, rowing, cycling, and jogging to avoid newbie nagging injuries from jogging?
Don't jog. Let me just put that one out there. So if we have to if we're going to use the ambulating modalities, walking is greater than, running is greater than, jogging. Jogging is the worst of the ambulating ones that you can do. It's like a really low fitness payout and a huge fatigue cost. You're better off at that point, either running or walking, for real.
Yeah. So, and also just you're going to beat up your joints doing that. Rowing's fine. Honestly, if you're going to go the cardiovascular route, there's a lot of really good options. The elliptical is a great option because it's not impact and it lifts full body. And you can do that without getting overuse for a long time. So, but honestly, I would just not do any of that stuff and just do more resistance training.
I've struggled to get the rower to be used in my hypertrophy program. The rower, it's not like terribly challenging, but it does toast your back. That's the thing.
It does. Yeah.
Even if it doesn't
It's too
feel
localized.
like it. Yeah, it really does. So I'm kind of poo-pooing on the rower for hypertrophy training, but it's a good cardio. If you want cardio, it's not a bad choice, but for this, not so much.
Number 2, when someone has frozen shoulder syndrome or similar to needing to do daily rehab exercises, basically teaching some muscles to function properly again, does this rehab work interfere with local muscle MRV, or is it only a little taxing to systemic MRV, as it's basically more related to neuromuscular improvement, not having muscle work per se? So those are actually 2 completely different questions. Does this rehab work interfere with local muscle MRV, or is it a little taxing to systemic MRV? It could be both or neither, actually. Mm-hmm. So does this, we will actually answer separately with these 2 questions. Does this rehab work interfere with local muscle MRV? Yes, probably to a small amount if it's just rehab work. But also if you're doing only rehab work, you're not using those muscles for anything else, so it kind of doesn't matter what the local MRV is. James, one of the craziest things I've ever seen, I'm not accusing you of doing this at all, it's just an aside, is people doing full-blown strength or hypertrophy workouts like way too soon, and like they're still rehabbing like PCL tear or something.
Oh, no.
And then on top of that, they'll do these like specific like single leg extensions with slow eccentrics, like to strengthen the tendon. And I'm like, you do realize that these rehab workouts are not a magic peppering you put in to get your knee stronger. Like You're already doing rehab times 1,000 on the leg press. you should just be leaving it the fuck alone. Better yet, don't leg press 1,000. Just do your rehab and then slowly. The rehab is nothing more than a structured way to reintroduce resistance training into your system, into your physiology and anatomy. That's it. So it's so funny that people are like, well, I do this rehab work, so I got to count it in my MRV. Like, if you're counting MRV, bro, you're not doing rehab work. Like, he's got his own MRV. You're fucked up. That's the only reason you should be doing rehab work. So real quick, sorry. So, yes, it interferes, but a very tiny amount. It's also irrelevant because you should just be doing the rehab work. And then if you're not rehabbing anymore, you should be easing in. And then does it tax systemic MRV? Probably very little, because rehab, look, if your rehab work taxes systemic MRV a lot, it's not rehab work, James.
Yeah, so what Mike's really getting at here, right, is like I think the issue you could make, if any, is the systemic one, because you could be injured somewhere and not all other places, right? And you could be training the rest of your body. So how much does the rehab that you're doing on your one injured spot spill over? Oh man, probably not. But should you be like counting if you injured your shoulder, should you be trying to train your MRV for your shoulder? No, absolutely not. That's the whole point of doing the rehab. That's what we're getting at here. So my mom actually got frozen shoulders. She woke up and got locked up. I think she had slowly been sleeping, and it had been progressively getting worse. And then one day she woke up and she was like locked up in this like goofy position, had to go to rehab, and she got, over time it got fixed. But I feel your pain, Erno. It's not a fun problem.
He says, last interesting fact related to above, for me at least, is that previously shoulder/bicep tendons hurt when doing pressing exercise for chest when lowering barbells, dumbbells too low. But now I can actually dumbbell press very low and get a nice stretch on my chest while not having pain. Mildly put, I'm pretty excited about this and it feels good. Well, that's really good to see you having progress. Number 3. Is Charles the strongest Korean in North America? He has to be at least top 5. He's almost certainly not the strongest, because there's, what the fuck is his name? Pug the Goat on Instagram is Korean, and he's just absolutely, he weighs like 165 or 181 or some shit, and he's legit squatting like 6 and benching like 370, and he deadlifts like almost 800, but it just doesn't make any sense at all. So relatively speaking, he's Charlie's not as strong, but on an absolute basis, Charlie might be the strongest Korean in North America, unless there's some kind of other giant Koreans running around, and probably one of the strongest Koreans in the world, to be honest. So yeah, there was only one Charlie Banks.
He's got to be up there.
Yeah, hilarious aside. His parents are like, so he's born in America, right? He's America's apple pie, but his parents are both from Korea. And his name is not Charles. It's actually Charlie. It's on his birth certificate, Charly. It's not even an E in there. They just made up a name that they thought was American, and that was it. And one of our other friends, Doug, who's also a Korean, he works for RP. He's Korean too. His name isn't Douglas, it's Doug. It's just Doug, right? So like, it's so funny because he was like, man, I used to write Douglas on my like assignments when I was in the 1st and 2nd grade, and then I found out that my name wasn't actually Douglas, and I was like, fuck, what the hell? I've been lied to this whole time.
That's so weird.
It's amazing. All right. Number 4, if Warren Buffett donated me $1 billion with one demand, which would be me not working anymore and only maximizing my hypertrophy, how would I split my workouts? For example, doing one set and then come back home to rest and return back when fresh for the next set, etc. Or should I only do exercises for a specific muscle and then rest and return for the next muscle of the day, etc.? Basically, the question is where the point of doing a set/exercise fresh versus doing multiple exercise for a specific body part to gain pre-exhaust and metabolics. I think we know from scientific literature and experience that usually the first muscle in working sets gets the most gains relatively. So you gotta be very careful about that. It's a very correct claim, that last one, that the first set gets the most gains relatively. But what that also is true in frequency. So you could say one session per week gets the most gains. If you add a session, you get like 1.2 times the gains. If you add another one, you go from 2 sessions to 3. Even if you're doing more volume, in addition to that, you only get 1.2 times more gains. If you do equivalent volume, if you just spread it out, then it's like 1.1 times the gains. And after 3 to 6 sessions per week somewhere, we even lose the statistical effect. So there's nothing so magical about the first set as far as hypertrophy that doesn't extend to the first session. Because a lot of people will do this. They'll say, okay, the first set is way more hypertrophic than the second set, which is actually not a technically true thing to conclude from the literature. The literature says doing one set grows you this much, doing 2 sets grows you that much. That doesn't mean there's necessarily a per set hypertrophy effect we're looking at, but we'll look at that in a second. So what they say is, okay, given that that's the case, what if we do 6 times a week frequency and do 6 total sets versus doing 6 sets all at once in a same session. And when we look at the growth difference between those, it is not 6 times the amount. It's not even close. It's like 1.4, 1.3 times the amount. More, for sure, but nothing like what you would expect, because every successive session you add is less hypertrophic. So just that you can say 1 set per session gives you the most hypertrophy, 1 session per week gives you the most hypertrophy. So the two largely tend to cancel each other out, right? That being said, the optimal frequency for training in most situations is probably a bit higher than most people expect. It's probably 2 to 4 sessions a week. It's probably not 1 session per week. And the optimum per session volume probably is muscle group specific. So if I think there's some credence to training like only the back, and then coming back and training only the delts, and coming back a third time and training only the biceps. It's almost certainly better than training back delts, biceps, and then coming back another day or coming back later that day to train more muscles. So spreading out is good. Unfortunately, and James may correct me if I'm wrong, we don't really know the limit of the spreading. We know there's some downsides. There's psychological downsides to the spreading, maybe nutritional downsides. It might even be like you said, pre-exhaust and metabolite downsides. Like if you do 3 sets of leg extensions and you do 3 sets of squats, that might actually be better for the quads than doing 3 sets of leg extensions, right, and then later coming back a day later doing 3 sets of squats, because you essentially don't get that boost in stimulus to fatigue ratio because there's other limiting factors now again, and so on and so forth. So I'm not really sure. I probably wouldn't, if I was sort of optimizing hypertrophy, I would for sure train 2 to 3 sessions per day on the days I trained much of the time. And I would for sure train most muscle groups 2 to 6 times per week. I definitely wouldn't gun to your head, get as big as you can. I wouldn't be like, well, I'll do 2 sessions total per week, each 3 hours long, right? Like, fuck that. Like, I am in a situation with my training where I'm sort of similar to that, where I have a very open schedule, and so does my training partner, Charlie. We train on average 9 times a week, 9 sessions per week. We've done as many as 12. The problem with 12 is your ability to recover from that starts to go straight to fucking hell. And then there's a huge inconvenience with showing up to the gym 4 times a day, and there's also a psychological cost to that that's really high. So your systemic fatigue might start to accumulate non-linearly if you have to be at the gym 4 times a day and try really hard. There has to be a distinct, and Alex Viada actually, funny enough, we'll have later questions about this. Alex Viada talks about this in his books and other writings, that there's something special to off time, both psychologically and physiologically, that is not accounted for by total volume. So sometimes running hard run in the AM, hard run in the PM is actually worse than running just one big hard run in the AM and having time to really, really settle down. So I would say that, the optimal number of training sessions per week, which is really what we're asking how to split them up, is probably it's for sure north of 6 sessions a week, but I don't think it's far north of like 12. I think if you're starting to do 2 a days on most of the days you train, going from 2 a days to 3 a days, which some weightlifters do, might be helpful, but there is like a big plateau there and probably into the negative. I think if you're training every day, you're training 3 times a day, even if the individual sessions aren't that hard, I think you're going to start to pay a variety of other kind of prices.
Yeah, I'm really with Mike on that one. I think the only time where it might be worth it, and I don't even know if it is worth it, training more than 2 times per day is in examples like weightlifting or track and field, like Mike said, because it's it's an intensity-based thing. There's literally a limit as to how much power you can generate in every one of those sessions, to the point that it's still producing a significant overload. So in those cases, it actually is not a bad idea to break up your workouts so that each one can be as stimulative as humanly possible. For hypertrophy training, it's just not the case. As long as you're hitting like your minimum intensity thresholds, right? You're not getting a ton more out of each session outside of a few distinct splits. So I'm with Mike on that one. Probably not north of 12.
Yeah. All right. Number 5, just wanting to shit test my thoughts. Someone doing mainly 10 to 30 rep hypertrophy work has smaller difference between 10 rep max and 1 rep max than someone doing mainly 1 to 10 rep strength work, right? Yep. Completely correct. Because there's more specificity there. I presume it's the same thing with 10 rep and 5 rep max differences. Yes. I also presume it works the other way around. For example, hypertrophy, gender neutral person has smaller differences between 20 and 10 rep max, and strength guy has bigger differences. Yeah, because for the strength guy, 10 rep max, he can use his strength to get a lot of reps. But at 20 reps, his endurance is such dog shit. Like, I know people whose 10 rep max is just about the same as their 15 rep max, because at 10 reps, they're fucking done. Actually, hilariously, for my squat, like my quads are relatively fast twitch. James, I've made careful observations over the years of this. I cannot do in the squat at any reasonable weight above 300 pounds any more than 8 reps, no matter the weight above 300 pounds, without accumulating lactic acid. It just doesn't happen. And I've actually, to be honest, if I squat at a relatively good cadence, even all the way down to 135 pounds, 8 reps later, I'm doing lactic acid. So once that stuff starts to hit, it just times me out. So like I've done high rep squats before. I've done 225 for a set of 30 way back in the day. And that was terrible, terrible, terrible. But, it's, you would expect by formula for me to be able to do, 315 for, so like I can squat, push comes to shove, and if I peak for it, I can probably squat 405 for 20 reps, right? What am I squatting 315 for? 24, maybe, right? Like for 30, but you would expect to do like 50. It's like, no. Those limiting factors, the faster twitch muscle fibers and the cap to aerobic utilization, because I'm just just can only be in so good of an aerobic shape. Those are where the caps are. So you're absolutely correct about that stuff, James.
Yeah, and actually, Mike Jared and I had a phone conversation not too long ago because of the idea of overload, right? And this is a good example of like an overload being more of a threshold, a range kind of scores for hypertrophy rather than like a pure linear progression. And Mike just gave a really good example. It's like, okay, well, where do you go after 405? Does it only go up? Right? Do you have to go up to 410, 425 and start adding reps there? No, the answer is not that. You can do a variety of other things. So one of the problems that we kind of ran into in the book was this like very just binary definition of overload. Whereas, in hypertrophy training, it's kind of like, it's kind of like the volume landmarks idea, where it's like, it's kind of a range, it's kind of a threshold, an operational area that you're working within. It doesn't have to be a binary, like this is more than this equals overload.
Yes. So, look, what James is talking about is guys will be like, you'll be like, I squatted 200 pounds today. And then 2 months later, you say, hey, I did 200 pounds for 10 reps. And they'll say, like, isn't that not overloading? Because you've done 200 for 10 before. And it's like, it's not, overload doesn't mean you have to do more than you did last time. It means that range of effective strategies moves up slowly over time. Oh, yeah.
Definitely.
Because you'll see that on Instagram a ton too. But doesn't it violate overload? Like, no, you don't know what overload means.
Exactly.
All right. And for the main question, for example, someone with 10 to 30 workout background can do 10 reps with 200 kilos and 1 rep or 240. And for some reason, we know his theoretical ability after serious long-term peaking would be to do 1 rep with 280. I don't know if we know that. We don't know that. That's just what the calculator spits out based on averages.
I see.
Yeah. So we don't know that. It could be 320 based on fiber type and neurology and conversion of fibers, or it could be 260. And then let's see what he goes. Do we have any knowledge how fast does that nervous system adaptation happen towards maximal strength? We do have knowledge, but there's a huge range. And it also depends on how you train. For example, in this case, it might be 240 to 260 or 240 to 270. Well, it depends on how long, right? What I will say is, James, I would love to hear your personal experiences on this matter. For me, it takes me from high rep hypertrophy training, like 10 to 20 rep sets, to get attuned to close to maxes. It takes me at least to 1 month of transition to remotely start feeling decent under sets of doubles and triples. There's a whole month for sure where I'm just total dog shit and I get zero conversion out of anything.
Oh yeah, I was going to say more like 2 or 3 months in my.
Oh, I need 2 or 3 months to get remotely close to the most out of it. But what I'm saying is 1 month is basically a waste of fucking time. It's just
it's trash. Yeah, that first month is trash.
Completely.
Especially if you go all the way into that like maximal rep range loading, like 1 to 3. I mean, it's not bad if you do that. And this is why Mike and I often recommend doing that intermediate kind of strength phase where you're doing like 4 to 8 reps or something like that, because you can at least have good training there. Whereas if you just jump the gap all the way to 1s and 3s, that whole month is just garbage.
Gone. And also like, you're like basically not strong enough to overload in the strength range, but you are not getting volumes that do anything anymore. So, and also like, this is why James and I don't, right, in the scientific principle of strength training, along with Chad, we said that for most cases, most exercises, unless they're very isolation-y or unless you have a good reason, 10 is the top limit of reps we do for hypertrophy, for strength, for powerlifting. And people say like, well, don't I need sets of 15? Like, good luck getting squatting for sets of 15 in your off season and then doing meet prep and trying to squat again for sets of 3. Like, that will take you months. But if you're squatting sets of 8, you're 1 month away from sets of 5s feeling real good. And then you're 1 month away from sets of 2 feeling real good. And then you're peaked, right? So we generally, if you're more than 2 to 3 months away from peaking, fuck, man, it's a long road, and sometimes a very perilous road, because a lot of times the technical adjustments you have to make, the perception, the way you brace, it starts to be so different that there's these sort of nonlinear learning curves that pop up, and you're like, I thought I was just going to be able to add 10 pounds to the bar every week, but like I'm my hip is hurting a little bit. I think I have to move my stance in, because a lot of times too, when you add more muscle and you change body weight, you have to reconfigure your technique. It doesn't just happen. So we always tell folks, like, don't do the sets of 15 and 20 and 30 in the squat and leg press if you're a power lifter. 6 sets of 6 to 10, you get all the size you need, but without getting so far off of the specificity train that you're just nowhere to be found.
And you could apply that to basically all strength and power sports, for example, too. Same recommendation.
100%. All right, Samuel L. Jack. I think he was going for Jackson, but he misspelled it.
I misspelled it.
Okay.
Yeah, that was my typo.
Samuel L. Jackson says, "Hi, Docs.
Jackson, Flex, and
I've started my first workout after 2 years of lifting and never counted any calories, just watched my body weight, made sure I ate enough protein that I was only macro I counted roughly. Now I'm a bit too fat and want to get decently lean for the first time. So now I enter everything in an app, which is actually way easier than anticipated, and see my protein may be way too high. I weigh 81 kilos and consume between 200 and 220 grams of protein. With the 1.8, 2.2 guidelines, it should be max about 180. I know there shouldn't be any big downsides physiologically, but my fat's at 60, my total carbs at 180. That might be too low. What are your thoughts on this? Should I lower my protein or roll with this for a while? This is after 3 days of the diet, and see how it goes and adjust later. Thanks, Doc. Always like the content. So I assume you're using like a MyFitnessPal kind of app to just track your stuff, which is a very good place to start. If you're using the RP Diet app, you wouldn't have to think about the shit. We would have more money. I'm just wondering
where that plug was coming in.
Exactly. It's just shameless. So I think you're doing a real good thing. There's really not any huge downsides, but this sort of might bite you in the ass later when you're like not jacking off anymore because you don't have any sex drive and you're flat as fuck because you're eating too few carbs. You're like, at least I'm eating a gazillion amount of protein. So actually what I would do, Sam, is I would just dial it down now. Dial it down into the normal range, because like as many people, including Menno Henselmans most famously have written, that range is so generous anyway that if you're above that range, I mean, you're really just like, for the love of fucking God, give yourself more carbs and fats now so that you don't run it. It's better to not run into dumb shit than fix dumb shit, James.
Yeah, and it's also generous in the sense that you're using your body weight and not even scaling it to your LBM. So you're using body weight, which is already a huge cushion. So you can play around with this. Like some people, they like having the extra protein because it keeps them feeling fuller and sated longer. A lot of people would prefer to have more carbs. And so I think you could easily drop your protein down a little bit to make some extra room for carbs and have slightly better training, slightly better recovery on average. That would be my first inclination, but there's a lot of individualization in there that you can play around with and say, like, do you like to have more fats? Do you like to have more carbs? Do you actually just want to keep your protein where it is? There's a lot of wiggle room there for individual difference. So my first inclination, though, would be, go ahead and drop that protein and raise your carbs up.
Yeah, it's kind of like, if you've got something clearly not wrong, but something clearly not optimal, and it's not optimal, and you're like, should I change it or wait? The onus, like the way James and I think, and this is pertaining actually to James's recent criticisms of some of the book stuff we're doing, hypertrophy book. How would if you cloned yourself and you're super smart and you knew your situation really well, how would you critique yourself if you had to red team yourself, if you had not straw man, but like basically a charitable opposite of steel manning, right? If you had to really go after yourself, a devil's advocate, right? And if you're like, why don't I change this now? Because I know it sucks. And you're like, wow, I can't actually argue against that. Well, then fucking change it. You know what I mean? It's like, it's almost like, okay, I have like 2 hours until my mom comes to visit. I can either relax right now with TV and then clean my living room, which is going to take me just 15 minutes, or I can just do it now. And then that little demon in your head's like, do it now, you fucking asshole. And you're like, well, but, and then you don't have any buts. Just fucking do it. So
just do it.
Yeah. All right. Sean Murakawa Rubin says, hello, guys. I've got a train of thought that I know is a mistake somewhere, but I'm not sure where.
Okay.
You guys we're like detectives, James.
It's fishing expedition.
Meh.
Tell me where you were last night.
I would be the worst detective ever. James, you and I would be terrible good cop, bad cop, because the guy would like be clearly lying and he'd be like, I wasn't there. And you'd be like, you're a fucking liar. And you turn to me and be like, I believe him, man. I think we should stop yelling at this man.
Like,
I'm not
damn
sure
it,
why
Mike.
Sorry. All right. I've got a train of thought. Okay. I'm not sure where. You guys have mentioned that one of the problems with effective reps models is that at high rep ranges, the last 5 reps might not actually necessarily engage all the fastest fibers due to fatigue buildup. and that 5 fresh reps with a heavier load to stimulate the fast twitch fibers much more. The faster fibers likely make up the majority of muscle growth, but aren't actually necessarily fully stimulated by the higher rep sets. Why is the 10 to 20 rep range considered best on average for hypertrophy? Wouldn't the lack of good fresh reps with fast twitch fibers make it less ideal? It would make it less ideal, but it has really, really good stimulus to fatigue ratios, which is this really big draw. So first of all, anywhere in the 10 to 20 rep range, you actually get really, really good faster fiber activation. It's not quite enough reps to really make prohibitive. It's not like it hugely affects, the fatigue doesn't hugely affect your faster fiber recruitment. It does to some extent, right? But also, it's much more volume for the intermediate and slower twitch fibers, which help. The mind-muscle connection is best there. Your technique is often best there. Your ability to zone in on the muscle you want. And the set-to-set fatigue is probably much lower, right? So if you're doing an average sets of 5, you can get as big as you want with sets of 5, but you will fucking break. Sets of 15, man, you could do until you're blue in the face. You could actually, and here's the really crazy thing, in set number volume, you could actually do more volume. Your MRV is higher. And this is not something we mention often. Your MRV is higher on average in the 15 rep range than it is in the 5 rep range. It just is. Maybe only by 5 sets or so, but that fucking adds up. And the fact that you're not hurting your connective tissues as much is a huge, huge deal. So I think that's where they get the big ranges. And look, I think, the 10 to 20 rep range is probably the best. I think for most people, that means 10 to 15. 15 to 20 is for those slower twitch fibers and so on and so forth. And there's got those other fast twitch downsides. But also remember this, you get really, really good metabolite stimulation and really, really good muscle swelling stimulation in those higher rep ranges. So it's not just about tension to the faster fibers, but there's also cell swelling and metabolites that are independent mechanisms of hypertrophy in addition to that, and they're much higher in the 10 to 20 rep range. The thing is, the 20 to 30, they're so high, but the 20 to 30, at least in short term, works just as well as the 10 to 20 and the 5 to 10, right? In the long term, it probably doesn't work as well, but in the 10 to 20 range, those things are high enough to really, really count, but the faster fibers still do well enough that they get a really, really good stimulus. So it's kind of like, not so much the best of both worlds, but the no real clear downsides for any of the worlds, and everything works out really well. Sorry, real quick, another thing. And this is something we just actually wrote into the book. There's an has been discussed by a few people. Eric Helms comes to mind. We actually, and this is something I just made the graphs for the figures for the hypertrophy book. The best mind-muscle connection on average is in the 10 to 20 rep range. Because it's too heavy in the 5 to 10 usually, because you're like, I don't even know what's happening. You're just surviving. But people think, the 20 to 30 is really light and get a good high mind-muscle connection. Not if you're going close to failure. The fucking pain of the lactic acid buildup in the 23rd rep range is so high that a lot of times you lose connection altogether. You're like, I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm just surviving at that point. So that 10 to 20 rep range happens to be this nice moderate range where you check all of the boxes, but there's not these huge downsides, James.
Yeah. And so one thing that's worth reiterating, and Mike already said this in so many words, is that 10 to 20 range is almost infinitely sustainable, whereas the 5 to 10 is definitely not. And the 20 to 30, you can do it, but after a while, you just peter out your gains very, very quickly. Whereas the 10 to 20 is you always make progress. You never get hurt. Sean, I think where your discussion point here might actually have some good positive credence is if we're looking at strength power sports, kind of ties into that last question, where let's say you have a strength power athlete, whether it's a powerlifter or weightlifter, but particularly if it's a weight class sport, so combat sports, barbell sports, things like that. Now you can actually make a really strong case in terms of what type of hypertrophy you want to be targeting, because you're also constricted by body weight, right? Whereas in bodybuilding, there are weight classes, but generally the goal is to gain lots of muscle mass. And so we're not really constrained by body weight as much. And we can fill up on lots of those intermediate and type 1 fibers, and it makes you look better. And that's awesome, right? But if you're in a weight class sport, you don't want to be putting on a lot of extra weight as the most explosive or strongest muscle fiber types, because it's really not serving the function that you want. So in that case, you would be getting a lot more out of those heavier sets, so that you could be as jacked as possible at your weight class and have the highest distribution of type 2X fibers that you have. That would be a very strong case for what you're going for. But since bodybuilding doesn't have that limitation, the 10 to 20 is really nice because it hits those fibers pretty good, and it hits a lot of the other ones too, so you get a really nice effect.
Number 2, related to question number 1, and again, I'm not sure what I'm not sure about. I always thought the rest long enough to at minimum get 5 reps rule, for later sets was related to effective reps principle. And then you can get roughly 5 reps. You're getting 5 good reps for your fast twitch fibers. I think I messed up with this. I think you guys have mentioned, though, how fast twitch fibers might not necessarily even be active in later sets of an exercise due to being too fatigued. So it might actually be in slower / intermediate fibers that end up performing those last couple of sets of an exercise. So if the 5 reps rule mentioned above isn't related to the effective reps model of fast twitch fibers, is it more of an arbitrary number chosen as a minimum number of reps for the sake of time efficiency? So it's not arbitrary, right? We see that sets of 5 and above perform notably better set for set in hypertrophy studies than sets of 5 and below, right? So sets of 2 and 3, it's just so little volume, it's going to take you a bunch of those sets. So you might as well rest long enough to get at least 5. Why do we say at least 5? Because after 5 sets, there's a rough equivalency of hypertrophy outcomes between sets of 5 and sets of everything else up to 30. So it's not arbitrary, but a part of it is, like you said, resting enough to get a meaningful amount of volume that we can call it a set. Otherwise, just fucking rest longer. If you don't rest long enough to get 5, you for sure will be so fatigued that your faster fibers are going to be really have a trouble committing to the movement. And just to clarify, in effective reps, the effective reps concept is valid in its moderated form, in the sense of like it has a fucking value. Yes, reps closer to failure, even as high as 30, are more fast twitch than otherwise. But it's not all your fast twitches only turn on in the last 5 reps and they're just completely off the rest of the time, and they account for all the force in the 5 reps. And if you just do the last 5 is all that matter. Remember, the extreme effective reps concept is literally the 5 reps are all that matter. That's wrong. But the last 5 reps do matter more than the first others. Absolutely. So we can use that as like, okay, 5 reps gets us into that moderated version of the effective reps principle. Okay, the last 5 reps are very good. They're the best, so we'll use them. And anything short of 5 reps is going to be just not enough reps to get enough volume that we can call it a set. And because it's so little rest, our faster fibers are really going to have a hard time contributing there because they're going to be so fatigued, so fatigued, so that if we check all those 3 boxes, we end up being, okay, north of 5 reps, there's not really another hard cutoff. And so okay, sets have to be at least of 10 reps. Like at least 5 reps checks all those boxes, at least on a basic level.
Yeah, I don't have much more to add. And one thing that I've said week to week is, just more effective sets gives you more effective reps. So you don't have to worry about that quite as much. So I wouldn't perseverate on the issue too hard. As long as you're doing 5 reps or more at a cap of around 30, you're probably doing a decent job for hypertrophy training.
Number 3, you guys have mentioned how the 5 to 10 rep range might not actually need as many sets as the other rep ranges, since the fast twitch muscles need less volume to benefit grow. What's going on in some of these high volume studies recently? They've been programs where participants did like 16 or even 32 sets, all in the 8 to 10 rep range, and alone going to failure every set. Wouldn't that be way overkill? I'd also imagine participants would, regardless, or at least rapidly overreach. Thank you, too, as always. So what's happening in these studies is, James Krieger actually just covered this, the rest times are very, very short. And what ends up happening with short rest times is you get 2 things. One, you get systemic limiting factors, cardiovascular limiting factors, synergist limiting factors. So people reach external failure, but the target muscles don't reach internal failure because they're not the limiting factors. Like they could still go more, but your lungs are like, oh, fuck that, we're done. And then what ends up happening is the per set stimulus falls. In addition to that, even if it's at the muscular level that the sets are limited, because of the short rests, a lot of times the faster fibers don't even, as you mentioned earlier, get a chance to turn on and really contribute nearly as much as they would. So while the first set is very fast twitch dominant and oriented, the later sets are much less so. And what ends up happening is, the later sets with short rest are incrementally more and more slow twitch composition or contributing. And that's sort of kind of as we alluded to earlier, not exactly a self-solving problem, but basically, if they rested long enough, then they would absolutely in the 5 to 10 rep range be able to get maximum growth out of way fewer sets than they're doing in these studies.
Yeah, I actually just listened to the podcast with Steve Hole and James Krieger where they touched on that today. Very interesting talk.
Oh, cool. That was recent?
Yeah, actually. So I didn't realize, this is just me being a knucklehead. Steve's podcast just shows up in my podcast app thing that I use
cool.
to compile podcasts. And so does Chad's, all of Chad's different podcasts. So I was just always waiting to see it on social media and then click the link. But yeah, you can just type in Revive Stronger into your whatever podcast app that you have, or, Jug Life or Beers with Chad, and those all show up. And so I was just dinking around on there today, and I was like, oh, it's just James Krieger talk. All right, I want to listen to that. Boom.
That's awesome. Yeah. James is
mostly me being stupid and not putting 2 and 2 together there.
There you go. All right, Aiden says, hi, Mike and James. Really appreciate both of you for answering my questions last week. Answers are amazing as always. Regarding last week's answers, I remember you saying that you had a course on personal training. I remember seeing one of your lecture series called Personal Training Course Videos from 5 years ago on YouTube. Is this the right one, or is there another one that you're referring to? Thanks a lot. That is exactly the one. And I mean, I taught it in real life. It was much better in real life than it can be on YouTube. But yes, absolutely, that course is available for free on YouTube.
Sweet.
Charles Vicker says, "Hey guys, just joined RP Plus. Love all the content. Lots of videos to keep me occupied during cardio." That's
you're
really
enjoying.
great. I always love like doing podcasts or stuff like that during cardio because you knock out these massive extra bird with a stone. Like I hate cardio that's just like you do it and you're like, well, I just burned some calories in an hour and got nothing else out of it. Like fuck that.
Yeah, I like doing podcasts and audiobooks. That's one thing I really got into was the audiobook scene. It's really nice because I am like the PhD person who doesn't read at all. Unless it's like a graphic novel or a comic book, I will not read it unless I have to, unless it's mandated to me. Like, James, you need to read this. I'll be like regretfully like, yes, fine, I'll read it. But the audiobooks, man, all day. Love it.
Yeah. And even if you read, the audiobooks are so easy, you might as well do them. You're not going to read while doing cardio. It's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, I've got a couple questions for you too. I have hypogonadism, and I'm on testosterone replacement. My dog getting that test. Do either of you have any thoughts on my dropping fats a little lower, not to 0, but maybe 0.15 to 0.2, than what is typically recommended during a cut, given I don't have to worry about sex hormone production? Most obvious potential problem I see is fat-soluble vitamin absorption. Poked around Google Scholar, my clinical nutrition textbook. And different sources cited ranges value from 5 to 15 grams in a meal as being adequate to optimize fat-soluble vitamin absorption in that meal, and I'll tell you even that is overkill. That's a pretty big range, and all the studies I saw were looking at absorption over the course of the digestion of a single bowl of food plus vitamin, not assessing long-term nutritional status exactly. Not sure if either of you have practical experience with this. I have a lot of practical experience with this because I have quote-unquote hypogonadism too, you feel me? So I will say that even with folks that are administering testosterone exogenously, if you drop your fats to a certain low point, your sex drive goes out the window just like it would even if you were not administering exogenously. And I think that's just a factor of just getting enough fats. So I would say that if you were interested in trying to drop your fats a little lower, see how everything feels. I can almost assure you're not going to have any problems with fat-soluble vitamin absorption. But you may have just not feel as good and not feel like your fucking sex drive is as high and might not feel as much vigor in training. I honestly think like a lot of the fat minima apply just as much for users of testosterone as non-users. I know that's not the party line, but being on both sides, I can tell you, like, I wish I could drop my fats to 0 and have more carbs, but every time I do that, I turn into a mindless zombie that doesn't even want to train hard. So,
yeah, my initial response to that was to say probably not a good idea, but I actually can't really justify that thought process. So I would say it's probably not a huge idea, but getting back to what Mike was saying, I think you should very much monitor to see if you have any mood disturbances, sex drive disturbances, sleep disturbances, anything like that. And if they start creeping up as a result of you dropping your fats too low, that'd probably be a good indicator to bump them back up to minimum levels.
And like Mr. Carbs himself, Broderick Chavez, him and I talked about what is a minimum amount of fat to take. And he's like, I'd like to see people under a gram per kilo, so if you weigh 100 kilos, 220, you're at 100 grams of fat. And I'm like, what's the advantage of going lower than that? He's like, you go to 60, you go to 80. Like, yeah, you might see some benefits, but anything below 60 is really just pointless. What is it that you're getting out of it at that point? It's just not clear. And you have to eat such weird foods to even meet that you're destroying your life enjoyment, which increases your stress level. And that cortisol might actually counteract all the benefits you're seeing. These benefits are so tiny. So I would say that anything below 0.3, yeah, okay, go to 0.2, but it's almost like you're saying, okay, should I walk 10 miles to pick up 5 cents? You'll get 5 cents out of it, but the walk might be worse than the fucking money. So
yeah, and it might be in your couch. You can just dig in your couch and get it.
It's covered with like old Frito-Lay chip dust.
Yeah, that's our house because of a certain someone who also lives here. Everything cheese.
Hello? The cat?
No, no. He's actually on like special prescription food now, and he looks glorious. Like he has like the metabolic kitty food now, and his fur is like so shiny and fluffy. Yeah, he's doing really good on the metabolic food, fat boy.
For some reason, that took my brain down a path, a very James Hoffman random walk path. There should be like aliens being like, "What is James Hoffman thinking about?" And I'm like, "Look, honestly, we can't predict." It is like, what if humans had metabolic special food, and how much money like charlatans could make off of saying that there was such a thing.
Oh,
And then the
yeah.
next thing I thought of was, so Gwyneth Paltrow has a candle now out for sale that smells like her vagina.
I saw this. This is so nasty.
But that's like peak, as far as I'm concerned, peak insanity. Fucking insane. Like, not to say, listen, fellas, you know what I'm saying? And ladies, I love the smell of vagina just like anybody else. You feel me? But like, for the love of God, a specific person's vagina, first of all, like, I am not a sexual conservative in the least, but isn't that a little private? I mean, like,
Also,
fuck, like, you know what I'm saying? I would even buy a candle that smells like pussy. Great, put it up, sweet, hilarious. But like, first of all, do you want everything you want smelling like pussy? It's a great smell. It's just not for all occasions. Second of all, it's specifically a person's, like Gwyneth Paltrow's. Like, who buys it? Here's my question for you, James. Who buys that? Who's the target audience?
That was my question. Where it's like, okay, so first of all, you're looking at a market of people who buys candles, right? So that's already like diminishing.
90% female to begin with,
right? And then it's like, okay, you want somebody who has a scented candle, like a non-just plain candle, right? So it goes down from there. Now you have one that has like a specialty, like sexual themed smell. Like, who the fuck is gonna buy this? Creepy dudes aren't even gonna buy this because they don't buy candles. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Here's the thing, like, if like they managed to put Antonio Banderas' musk into a candle, dude, if I was a fucking woman, I would buy the fuck out of that shit and smell like candle every day. But the thing is, how many women want Gwyneth Paltrow's fucking? And the thing is, like, okay, well, let's say we're targeting gay women. Like, I'm not so sure lesbians are super interested in Gwyneth Paltrow per se. You know what I mean? Like,
or even vagina smell,
right?
Like
vagina, exactly. Because like vagina smell is a context. It's like getting a candle that smells like chili or Frito-Lay's potato chips. Like, it's a fine smell in context, but I don't want my house smelling like chili for no goddamn reason.
Do you remember when I think it was Burger King released like Burger King themed cologne? I think it was them. Or maybe it was them or KFC. Somebody did like fast food themed like cologne smell.
It's funny, right?
That's more of like a novelty, right? That's like you buy it as a gag, right?
But like, her shit is not a gag, bro. She takes that seriously as fuck.
Oh, that's so weird. I wonder, like, she must have had some investor that was like, look, I got this great business idea. Hear me out. It's a little weird. We're going to make a candle, wait for it, that smells like your vagina.
Yeah, like, how do you even engineer something like that? I mean, like, there's material scientists that like make these sense. Like Josh and Angie Vogel, James, my jiu-jitsu instructors, they have their own candle business now, like as a joke, and that's actually very profitable. They're like jiu-jitsu themed candles, like they're really funny. I mean, like, so they say like matte sweat is one of the smells, but it's not. It's just a really great smelling candle. It's just funny, right? But like, engineering all these smells requires a bunch of combination of various molecules and all these scented oils. Oh, yeah. Like, she had material scientists. Like, did they poke around at her vagina? Like, how does it even work? Like, did they have a sample? Like, what a ridiculous. Can you imagine working on that project and be like, oh, we're working with Gwyneth Paltrow, her secretion samples? Like, what?
Was it like fresh out of the shower, or was it like post workout, or was it like no shower for 2 days? Kind of like
Hollywood negotiation smell.
Like the office was slightly too hot, so you've been sweating all day in the same yoga pants.
Weird. Fine. All the questions in the world, and I don't want any of the answers. All right.
The timestamp on this one's going to be great. It's going to be like
Mike and James talk
sports science. Huge chunk talk about vagina candles.
Yeah. Milo, our timestamp guy, is going to be fucking having a hoot at this.
I work hard for my results, and I need my diet dialed in. The RP Diet app tells me what to eat to keep me on track and offers suggestions for changes based on my responses, giving me the freedom to choose my path. A personal digital diet coach for less than $15 a month? Yeah.
All right, number 2. Prior to having my hypogonadism diagnosed and treated, I was very obese for a good decade. My highest weight being 300 pounds and 5'11", BMI 42. I dropped down to 200 pounds in 2014 and managed to stay stable there. Last spring, I cut down to low 180s and I maintained in that intervening months. Damn. I just started cutting with the goal of getting down to 170 over 12 weeks. Is it realistic to think I can maintain a weight that low given my prior history? It'll be tough. James, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's tough, but I mean, like, it's only like a little over 10 pounds, it sounds like, over 12 weeks. It's a very doable goal on paper. It's just going to be hard given how big you were previously. Yeah. But on paper, it's a very doable goal. That's what I would think.
I don't want to set myself up for a nasty rebound, but I really like to give myself a little breathing room to put mass on without my creeping too far in the overweight range, blood pressure concerns. So remember, blood pressure concerns could also be mitigated by medication, but I'm not a doctor. Don't listen to that. Plus, having clearly visible abs for once in my life would be pretty sweet. Indeed, that is pretty sweet. For what it's worth, maintaining the low 180s has been easy. My maintenance calories are 300 to 400 a day, which is in line, even slightly above what equations predicting my activity levels. My hunger levels are fine as long as I stick to satiating food and get in 8+ servings of veggies. I mean, given that you're okay in the 180s, I don't suspect the 170s are going to be night and day. Well, if you told us that you were like starving to death in the 180s, I would say the 170s are a waste of your time. Right. So I think it's worth going for, but if you find like after 2 or 3 months of maintaining at 170 that you're like still dying, go up to 180, 190 and you'll be totally fine. Listen, at your height, 5'11", you can weigh up to 200, 210, 20 pounds and be 100% healthy, no problem. So I wouldn't push that low for no good reason at all.
Yeah, don't get too caught up on the number. I mean, like, I think what you want is to like see your abs and be happy with your body composition. Don't arbitrarily chase that number if like the abs come before that and you like the way you look.
You're going to like the way you look. I guarantee it. What is that? Suit Warehouse?
Yeah, Men's Warehouse.
What if you like show up and get a suit and you're like, this sucks? He's like, I was just kidding about the guarantee. I mean, that's just more of like a verbal tactic than a real promise.
I don't like Men's Warehouse that much, but also I don't need to buy suits that much. So whatever.
Yeah, there you go. Problem solved. Number 3, in one of the nutrition videos, Dr. Mike says that seitan is one of the better vegan protein sources. Shortly after, he says that gluten is a trash protein source. I like the SJW lingo there. Men are trash. Gluten is trash. This confused me since seitan is 80% plus wheat gluten. Does the extraction process substantially improve the biological value of gluten, or did you mix up seitan with a different product? Protein product, I looked around for PDCAs for seitan specifically. I couldn't find one, but wheat gluten scores ridiculous shit, 8.25. It sure does. I'm not a vegan, but I do try to minimize meat intake, especially industrially farm meat. I like to pronounce it as Satan.
I like Satan too.
Yeah, I tend to use Satan sparingly. That's just funny to read by itself. And not only with higher quality proteins, give some examples: TVP, tofu, legumes.
What's TVP? I'm drawing a blank.
I have absolutely no idea. It sounds like a cardiac condition.
Something vital protein?
I don't know. But it's great to cook with, so if I could eat it on its own, it'd be pretty sweet. So here's the deal. The reason I say seitan is a good protein source is mostly because it's just one of the very few vegan foods that's mostly protein and mostly not anything else. Because a lot of the foods are like, anytime you get protein, you get a lot of carbs and fats with it. Seitan tends to be relatively low in fats and carbs, which gives it the advantage of being a lot of protein. It's not a super, super high quality protein as well as I know off the top of my head. So I wouldn't go ahead and recommend that as like something you eat all the fucking time for all of your protein, but it just tends to be a pure protein source in the sense that there's not a lot else going for the ride. That's a difficult problem for vegans because a lot of times, meat eaters have all these protein sources that are essentially just 100% protein, basically 0% everything else. The vegans, man, it's tough. That's the tough part. So.
Yeah, if Dr. Wife is out for the moment, but if she pops back in before the webinar's over, I can pitch her the seitan question, see what input she has, because she does a lot.
It's definitely not a complete protein source, but it's a lot of protein. So especially if you combine it with other protein sources, it can give you a wallop of protein, which if the other amino acids are accounted for in the other protein, it can be really good.
Yeah.
Right. Thanks a lot. The information you guys put out there has been extremely helpful. I started lifting a year ago and made and continue to make super solid and consistent gains without injuring myself, which are largely attributed to having easy access to high quality information and resistance training programming. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.
It's just really nice.
Glad to help.
Yep. Christian Alvarez says, "Hey docs, I'm another former YouTube plebe that joined RP Plus for them sweet benefits." Sweet, awesome. A couple of questions for you guys. Number 1, currently running a cutting phase, and it's seeming like I won't hit the goal that I want. Low enough body fat percent for visible abs. Within the 10% maximum weight loss recommendation over a maximum of 16 weeks of dieting, or it might be very close. As things are, it seems that I'll hit that 10% maximum at week 20 of cumulative dieting. I say cumulative as I've been experimenting with diet breaks, but going on maintenance are pretty close when deloading. Without diet breaks, it would be 16 weeks of being in a significant deficit when I hit 10%. My question is, when is it okay to go outside of the recommendations, and how would you be able to tell when you should call it quits and go back to maintenance? That's actually really, really simple. Performance is one. If you're lifting in the gym is really straight, that's really awesome. If it's starting to fall off, it's not great. A lot of it's perception, hunger, food focus. Like if you can't wait for your next meal, you're super fucking hungry, you're fantasizing about cheating, it's probably time to call it quits pretty soon. But if you're totally fine, your diet's rocking, and you're not really like, oh man, I can't wait to eat. You're like, oh, I can't wait to get abs. Then you're probably fine. Another one is NEAT. If you're still very active and you're moving around a lot, you don't seem like you're super tired all the time, you just want to sit and be dead, that you're really good. If you want to sit and be dead all the time and you're just lifting your hand to get the remote control is a lot of work, then it's probably time to call it quits. So stuff like that. James, anything on that?
Yeah, I would say like at that point you're going to look. Mike already said this, but like the performance in the gym and then your psychological measures. So you can look at some of the psychological factors associated with overreaching, and then look at things like cravings and things like that, and go from there.
Yeah.
But Mike already
He
nailed that.
says, would it be based off of performance and how food focused you are? Oh, that's sweet. He got both of those.
Yep.
As it stands, I'm dieting 10 weeks, not counting breaks, and I feel pretty good. Performance dip for my lower body in the beginning, most likely a programming issue as I was too strength focused. I'm a aspiring powerlifter. But now my lower body lifts are back to where they were pre-diet after a loss of 13 pounds. Upper body lifts have remained either the same or improved. I'm also not food focused at all, and dieting hasn't been difficult as previous ones. I suspect it's experience and diet breaks. Sure, but remember, 10 weeks is a real long ways off from 20. So I would say just take it like 3 weeks at a time, right? Get to 13, see how you feel. Get to 16, see how you feel. If you feel great at 16, you can do another 3 to 4 weeks and finish up. But if it's 16, you're like, man, fuck this. Then look, here is a real big downside of stopping a diet. Instead of going to 20 weeks, stopping at 16, taking a 3-month diet break, and then finishing up the next, do another 8 weeks and get abs. Here's the downside. Ready? There's no downside. There's no fucking down. It's just a little bit extra time. In the grand scheme of things, it means nothing. Here are the downsides of going a bit too hard. Rebound, catastrophe, overeating, shitty results, metabolic issues, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Tons of psychological stuff is just not worth it. It's much better to stop a little short, do a great job, reconvene and come back, than it is to go burn out too far and then go shoot all the way back up.
And the one thing I'd add too is like you might notice that you're able to kind of go like a long stretch with these diet breaks every now and again. But what I would also watch out for is like if you start seeing those disturbances in your performance and like in your mood, like we already talked about, and then you take a diet break, right? And for like a week, and then you start feeling better. And then once you get back on the diet, like within another week, you start having those same symptoms coming up, and then you're going back and forth, like diet problems, diet break, diet problems, diet break, diet problems, diet break. It's probably time just to cut that diet at that point and just go right into maintenance and then start over on the next cut.
An almost completely analogous process is when people do autoregulatory deloading and no proactive 1 week deloading.
Exactly.
They'll deload one body part at a time. And it's like, great, you bought yourself another week of one RIR lifting until you have to deload again. Your paradigm, accumulation to deload paradigm is now 1-to-1.
Yes.
That sucks.
So just keep an eye out for that.
Number 2, after my diet, I plan on running a hypertrophy phase for my lower body only, as it is lagging behind too much size for my liking. For my upper body, I still want to be strength focused and not put it on the back burner. So my question is how I would go about programming the deloads. Currently, my strength measures are either 4 or 5 weeks long, and haven't actually run a full-on hypertrophy measure with high volume line works yet. Although I've been experimenting during my cutting phases with some success, I think. So not sure how long they'll be. I have a feeling treating them separately would be a bit wonky. Yep, and it would also violate the try to bring down systemic fatigue every time. And far from optimal because fatigue would be probably managed. Yep. Do I just shorten or extend the upper body strength measure depending on how my lower body measure goes to align the deloads since growing my legs a priority? But just accepting it won't be optimal for my upper body. So this is something we covered in the last webinar, but it bears repeating. Taking all the research and the theory together on the accumulation to deload paradigms, and James and I were very clear about this. And this is something we think is a very high probability of being true. A 4-to-1 paradigm versus an 8-to-1 paradigm is almost no difference at all in results. You would think, well, fuck, it's twice as good. You don't lose any muscle over a week, and you drop so much fucking fatigue that your workouts in a 4-to-1 are always awesome. Whereas an 8-to-1, either the first 3 or the last 3 weeks are going to be total dog shit, either too easy or too hard. So I think that you can easily adjust your upper and lower workouts to fit into that 4-to-1 or 5-to-1 paradigm, and you're going to be missing fucking nothing.
Yeah. And like doing it, some people are big on this. And I think, Menno has made some really good points on auto-regulating your muscles in an asynchronous way. And it definitely can be done. And I think for advanced lifters, it's not a terrible idea. In fact, it might be a good idea. But I think for the most part, when you are doing it asynchronously like that and you're never giving yourself a full break, you're coming at a pretty big disadvantage. So I would just try to align your upper body stuff as much as you can with the lower body stuff and just do your best at that point. If you're really trying to extend one out and then back off the other, you're going to have that systemic spillover and it's going to be a continuing problem.
Yeah. Daniel Hacker, a man that has broken the Illuminati database wide open, believe it or not. Surprisingly, they're all involved in almost nothing. Yeah.
I thought my dad was in Illuminati for a while, but he checked out. He's all right.
Are you serious?
No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, no, I didn't know. Who knows these days? You actually find the Illuminati.
He still actually might be. I'm not entirely. The jury's not out.
There you go. See, that's the thing, James. You're a smart guy. You never can tell, right?
I'm just too suspicious.
That's true. It's called paranoia.
Yeah.
The doctors have a name for that. That's why you take your pills every day. Daniel Hacker says, do you think it's better to train closer to failure on the lateral rear delts and calves specifically, that instead of going 0 to 4 RR over the course of a mesoaccumulation, maybe starting with 2 RR and progressing to past failure over the course of an accumulation? For these body parts in particular, they're so small, for so many resistant to growth and change. Do you think maybe 3 to 4 RR sets for them is simply not good enough? I haven't tried this yet, but I'd like to. Obviously, on your go-ahead, whenever I start a mesocycle, oftentimes I'm unsure what's really going on when I do something like a dumbbell lateral or cable upright row with 3 or 4 reps in the tank. It feels like only in later mesos when I get closer to failure things really start happening. So actually, it's very good to answer this question. First of all, if it's you think they're more fast twitch than not, then yes, closer to failure is probably better for them than not. Slower twitch would probably benefit from staying further away from failure. Another thing is a lot of the form failure stuff you can modulate. Instead of getting closer to failure, you can just do more sets or fewer sets instead of getting too far away from failure. But lastly, it really comes down, and this is one of those things people say the mind-muscle connection doesn't matter. Here's where it really starts to matter. If you really just don't feel a fucking thing in your delts until you get close to failure, then yeah, flow train close to failure. But many people are the other way around. For my side delts, if I get really close to failure, I don't even know what's going on anymore, man. So with like 3 or 4 RR, I feel like really, really good. You can really, your mind-muscle connection is often higher at the lower RRs the higher RRs, farther from failure than it is close to failure. So if you think like you really get a hugely bigger advantage getting really close to failure, then yeah, experiment going a little bit closer to failure. But it all comes down to you, and not everyone is going to feel like that about all body parts, James.
Yeah, and so it's like completely feasible that you could run if you're running like a 4-4-1, you could run it as like 2 from fail, 2 from fail, 2 from fail, 1 from fail, and that would probably be fine. Like on paper, like we'd still want to see some kind of progression there, But I think, like Mike said, if you're just not feeling it and you only really feel it at that like 2 from fail or 1 from fail spot, I think that's okay. And like the risk of injury on those muscle groups, relatively low. Systemic spillover, relatively low. Like you're not going to ruin your squat workout the next day because you pushed it on your lateral raises or your calf raises too hard, earlier in the week. So I think that's fine. I think you can play around with it and see how it goes.
So I'd like to share something with you, James, and the YouTube community on this, and the RP Plus community, of course. My God. I mean this in the best. This is totally a joke, right? I don't mean to sort of single anyone out.
Maybe think about it. Maybe think about it.
No. I already it's fine. So like you get these questions of like the minutia are so minutia that you start to think like, can this person get out of bed every morning and make wise decisions for themselves, or are they paralyzed forever? Somebody asked me like on a lateral, because I post my lateral raise video and I did like the 55s for 13 or something, and some guy's like, hey, do you break at the wrist? Like, and thus improve your lever arm, or do you hold your wrist out straight? And my answer was, I have no idea what's happening at my wrist because I'm fucking lateral raising the 55s. I can't feel my sole anymore. I'm just trying to use the good technique in the very basic sense of moving the dumbbells in a not retarded manner. Like, it's just, to think of, have I thought about that? Of course, but I thought like it's probably irrelevant in the grand scheme because it doesn't fucking matter. It all regulates. You probably do the same thing every time. And what I also told him was, look, I can't actually hold my wrist extended with the 55s out all full. That's impossible. Like there's no way I'd have extensors that strong. Like and at that point, my mind muscle connection is on the extensors instead of my delt. Like, what is even the point? You know what I mean? It's almost like people are like, hey, are your toes down when you're squatting? Like, are you poking your toes into your shoes? Like, if you're thinking about that when you're squatting, I don't know what you're doing. Like, what about your quads? It's just kind of one of these really crazy things. And I was like, wow, holy shit. This is what makes your shoulders big, is that. And that's the minutia that's going to get you jacked.
Well, like the question at face value is like, do you ever think about shortening the moment arm for shoulder exercises? Like, yeah, that's why you would do a lateral raise versus an upright row. But within the same exercise, like a lateral raise, come on, dude. Like,
yeah.
What are you doing?
And one guy a couple weeks ago, is a different guy. He was like, "Oh yeah, like I noticed that your wrists are pointed down, so that like weight you're using is not nearly as impressive." And I'm just like, "You got him."
Oh fuck you! That's what what? Like,
got him.
Fuck you, guy. That kind of shit pisses me off so bad. It's
like,
not that impressive. First of all, it doesn't matter. Like, whether you think it's impressive or not. You go fuck yourself, right? Like,
for
get
sure.
the fuck out of here. But second of all, let's see you do that. You'll see you do that, homeboy.
Dude, for sure. But also, it's like, are we to assume that most people who lateral raise keep their arms completely, or their wrists straight? Also, isn't arm length way more variance than just this? Like, my arms are short, or they're long.
I don't even know if this is a measurable difference in, like, biomechanically. You know what I'm speaking? Like, could you even measure?
Yeah, because like what you're actually measuring isn't the declination; it's the horizontal declination,
distance.
which is literally it's like half a centimeter or something. It's like you're nuts. Congratulations.
I would have liked that video, but your wrists were bent, so I don't think it's that fuck.
Literally, Pete, that's
fuck you. Get out of here.
Like, no, you're insane. All right, one more. When programming compound move for 3 mesos in a row, what do you think is the best way to program it during that third meso? I know I have a video discussing this in detail on RP Plus, but honestly didn't fulfill me enough, so I'm asking this very specific question here. Meso 1
weren't fulfilled. Sorry, we let
you're looking for something at RP Plus that we don't offer. You need to go to church. Meso 1, the move is new, so MEV is super low. Pick some arbitrary numbers for the sake of questions. So Meso 1, you start your move at 3 sets and finish at 6 over the accumulation. Seems reasonable. Meso 2, maybe you'll add a set to MEV and maybe not, you'll add a set to the extra MRV in the case of 4 to 7. Also with an increase in load and potentially getting a few reps. Now, in Meso 3, you're certainly not going to get 5 sets to 8. Maybe not. The VDAR RP Plus would have me believe I'd scale back a bit, increase my variation for body parts within the session. So in this case, maybe 3 to 5 sets with still increased load and let more exercise variation drive the volume and increases. Right? Just absolutely right, but so are about 30,000 different other combinations.
Right.
You want to make sure it's just hit the big picture. Are you getting enough work there to check, okay, I'm still doing squats, I'm still doing the heavy, and I'm doing them above my MEV? If that's the case, great. And then there's other concerns that enter after that, like can my joints handle this? Am I adding more exercises, more frequency, or more volume, and do I need to make room in my total weekly quad MRV for that to be the case? So as long as it's above MEV, the world is your oyster, and then you have to justify your other decisions. Like you say, okay, I'm adding an exercise. It's not the question of like, should I do sets 5 to 8? But should I add another exercise? If you can say, yeah, another exercise is great because it decreases your risk because variation. It decreases, repetitive injury risk. And it allows me to do more volume because I added a session. Then for sure it justifies by itself. And then, okay, now that I have another exercise, how does that change my volume landmarks on the MRV end for these squats that I'm doing? Well, I'm certainly not going to go up to 8 because now I have way more volume in this other session. I'm going to start with 3 and see how the soreness heals, and maybe I'll end at 4, maybe I'll end at 5, maybe I'll end at 6.
Yeah, that's really good. There's a ton of options there. I'm just looking at the question. He says, now in Meso 3, you're certainly not going 5 to 8, right? That might not be for the same exercise, right? If you're doing bench press, for example, you might not be starting at 5 and going to 8. You might still go for like 4, like if you had a 4-week progression, you might go 4, 4, 5, 5 on bench press, but then fill in a bunch of that other chest volume with something else that you can do for higher reps that use not as brutal, right? Like push-ups or chest flies or any number of combination of other things. So you might actually be filling your volume up that way, but you might start divvying up that volume in slightly different ways depending on the rep ranges that you're using and the frequency in which you're training them. And that's something usually like Meso 1 and 2 for a lot of my clients will look pretty similar. Meso 2 will start incorporating more of that 10 to 20 range, and some movements like barbell movements, that's not always a good choice. We might see some variation there. But when we get to Meso 3, right, you're going to see a lot more of like the 5 to 30 type stuff, and you can't really program high bar squats like sets of 10 to 20 and then down sets 5 to 30. That just doesn't work very well, right? So in that case, you might see some like barbell movements in there, and then using something else like a leg press or a knee extension to fill in some of that other weekly volume, because you can just do it more frequently and at higher reps.
Tim Vork, sweet name.
Unshare it, damn it.
Hi, if I do a deload week every 4 weeks during a massing phase and I'm trying to gain weight at the lower end of the RP gaining rate recommendations of 0.25% body weight per week, should I lower my calorie intake to maintenance during the deload weeks, or should I not change anything and keep my calories surplus? So I'll tell you, at 0.25, it really doesn't matter much. Like if you were more aggressive, I would say maybe you want to lower it a little bit. Your really advanced answer is you probably want to, for the first half of your deload, keep that surplus. For the second half, go to maintenance. But honestly, if you're finding that eating that many calories is kind of annoying and you're kind of stuffing yourself, just eat enough protein and don't stuff yourself on the deload week, and you're totally good to go.
Yeah, and sometimes it's good to just keep the train rolling, like with a lot of people that I've worked with, like whatever is working and it's not disrupting your life so terribly, like just keep doing it, right? If you are finding that eating that much is getting annoying, then backing off a little bit to make not a bad idea. But also, like if it's tolerable and you have a good schedule, good meal prep, everything is in line and you're on schedule with everything, just keep doing what you're doing.
Jason Koshi says, gents, I've been going through the RP Plus lectures on athletic development, and it has been fascinating. I'm developing a structured approach to jumping higher with the goal of dunking.
Yeah. All right.
Some shit I'll never do.
This is fun.
Moving through hypertrophy strength, speed, and speed peaking. Looking forward to learning from you in this particular forum as I bombard you with questions. Question number 1. As I move towards power, I will decrease lifting volume to MV levels. The last 2 to 3 weeks, I'll probably forego weights and transition to plyometrics / sprinting completely with the assumption that this will ultimately help me jump higher / peaking side competition. Will sprinting / plyometrics be sufficient to maintain leg musculature? What would be the maximum amount of time I could do sprinting / plyometrics before I see a decrease in muscle mass? Or does this provide enough overload to maintain? I saw James' lecture on phasic periodization, but curious for expounding thoughts on the context of jumping, James.
Yeah, so usually what we would say in these cases, especially if you're just peaking for if you just want to dunk one time and get it on Instagram, you can just take the weightlifting out completely. That's totally fine. More likely, if you're doing this in a sports season kind of thing where you're going to be peaking for an extended, not peaking truly, but if you're an in-season, you're trying to maintain your preparedness for a high amount of time, what we would say is you probably want to take your lifting to maintenance volumes. Now, the good thing is sprinting and plyometrics will kind of contribute to that, but it won't be an entire holistic thing for an extended period of time. So what we're kind of getting at is you can do your sport training, your jumping, your sprinting, all that stuff, and that will maintain most of your size for a little while, maybe for, I don't know, maybe 3 weeks, 4 weeks on the top end before you will actually start to see that start to deteriorate. Now, the deterioration will be relatively slow, maybe not even noticeable unless you do it for a long time. So what we usually say is a good way of dotting your I's and crossing your T's is to actually just keep some resistance training volume in there at maintenance volume. So keeping a high bar squat movement, keeping a bench press, keeping a pull up or a row variation. And we're talking 1 to 2 sets, twice a week. So maybe for a grand total of 4 sets of squats or 4 sets of bench press. Not a whole lot. That would be more ideal than taking it out completely. Now, like I said, if you're just doing it for if you just want to peak for a one-time thing and just be able to say, I dunked and check, I'm good, right? You can really elevate preparedness super high by dropping all those things out to below maintenance values. And then you're going to have a huge spike in preparedness for a little while and then a rapid decrease into deconditioning. And you can take advantage of that, but probably not best practice overall. I would probably keep some maintenance volume of lifting in there. But to answer your question, yes, the sprinting and plows will contribute to that MV, but you should still have some weight training in there to keep the whole, for maintenance volume.
Number 2, I suppose this follows the previous question. Number 2, part 1. In regards to body composition, hypertrophy strength endurance phase, is there a way to include plyometrics and speed in quad ham development, or is it strictly for later phases? If it can be included, are specific programming tips here, resources you can point to, such as a chart?
Yeah, I like that question. So specifically, no, it can't be trained in that phase because of the fitness characteristic MRV for things like power and speed will be blunted by all the fatigue that you generate from the hypertrophy training, right? So the MRV of power and speed is really way too low if you're concurrently doing hypertrophy training. Now, that being said, what I like to recommend people do at these times is a technique maintenance. So if there's some kind of skill, whether it's weightlifting movements like snatch and clean and jerk is a really good example of this, but sprinting and jumping movements can also be included in there. You do some low intensity, just technique maintenance work where you just try and keep the movement fresh. You're not training it in the sense you're not trying to become more explosive. You're not trying to jump higher, run faster. You're just trying to maintain your good mechanics so that eventually when you transition back to actually training those things, you don't have weeks and weeks of pitiful relearning, not even up to MEV training yet. So you kind of keep it in the mix from a technique perspective, but you can't train it until later because the fatigue you get from the strength endurance and hypertrophy stuff is just too high. It diminishes your ability to express strength and power, so therefore it cannot be overloaded.
Yep. Number 2, in regards to power performance, I'm having difficulty thinking of how to program plyo and speed intensity and volume. Any tips or resources to figure out MRV here? I've considered Philippin's chart as per Dr. Miller's suggestion on his videos, but not exactly sure what a jump would be equivalent to. 90% plus lift, ?
So a lot of the times on the plyos and the sprinting type stuff, you could use kind of an RPE type proxy, and that tends to work okay, right? Now, if you had fancy lab equipment, you could actually look at the velocity bands, the power outputs, and try and use a more strict programming guideline on that. But I think for most people, basically you kind of have your 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, and maximal effort type movements. I think it's kind of hard to scale a 7 out of 10 on a sprint or a jump, right? I think like the 80%, 90%, 100% is kind of an easier one for people to conceptualize. And I think that will work fine. In terms of volume, it's kind of the same stuff. You just use the same like number of efforts, number of repetitions, number of sets, all of those things still apply.
Number 3, in the context of athletic training, I'm getting stronger for reps with hypertrophy. Is there a benefit to a strength phase before I transition to more of a strength speed or simply speed phase? I'm following RP's principles. In 4 weeks on a cut, my 10 RM is increased by 10%.
Definitely. So like what we're kind of getting at here is like you have a hypertrophy phase or maybe a strength endurance phase, which is like 10-ish reps, right? And then the goal is to get to the explosive, like the power phase, which is usually between 1 and 5 reps. Should you do something in between that? And generally what we would say is, yes, it's probably not a bad idea if you have time in your annual plan to have that intermediary strength phase, which might throw back to earlier in the episode, we talked about a little bit, where you're doing something like 4 to 8 reps, really starting to ramp up your force development. And then when you eventually get into that explosive phase, you will already have tuned up yourself a little bit to putting out high forces, and then transitioning into explosive action is not as hard. If you go from hypertrophy to explosive power, that first month, again, it's just going to be dog shit. It's going to be really rough. So it's nice to have that like high force kind of intermediate stage before you get into the maximal strength and explosive strength phases.
Mm-hmm. Annual plan. I'm currently working through the annual plan based on the videos you created. You mentioned creating additional scenarios. I would love to see your feedback on a plan to optimize jumping. If I attach my plan, would you be willing to critique it? Maybe it's valuable for others as well. I'll say right now, it's difficult for us to critique individual plans that are very complicated because there's so many critiques and so little time. We don't want to do a piecemeal critique. If it's a part of a plan, maybe. James, what do you think?
I think a better thing that I think is very appropriate would be to ask us specific questions. Like if you send me an annual plan, unfortunately, I just don't have the time or resources to go through and critique every little thing about the annual plan. That's going to take me like an entire day, right? But if you're building it and you have some specific scenarios or questions about things that have come up along the way and you want to post them up on RP Plus, I'd be glad to tackle those things. But if you just say like, here's my annual plan, what do you think? I'm going to say, unfortunately, I can't do that. So specific questions, always welcome. Like generalized feedback, unfortunately, something that we can't do because it's too time invasive. But yeah,
all right.
But definitely, I just wanted to reaffirm, like, yeah, definitely, if you have questions, post them up and we'll answer for sure.
Brandon Armstrong says, regarding my question from last week, I don't run HIIT but VO2 max intervals. I read that VO2 max is something to strive to improve to decrease run times. Jack Daniels. That's a type of whiskey, sir. Just kidding.
It is to a point. There's a point of diminishing returns.
Yeah, he actually mentions that right after. And I've also heard that it's a useless metrics for a couple of different sources. Just wanted to get your guys' take if it's worth doing VO2 max intervals to increase this metric specifically, and if so, where would I place that within my training cycle? I would guess around the time that I add mile practice, but maybe sooner. So what I would actually recommend is hiring a mile coach, like an endurance training coach. Because Brandon, you're going to learn so much from just that coaching experience of all this kind of real world, what's good, what's not. Because from a theoretical perspective, James and I can sort of validate or invalidate a variety of things. But there may be a time and a place. So basically, you want to build your VO2 max early in the training phase so that it's not a limiting factor, and then lactic acid and then competition stuff is going to be a limiting factor later. So is it like if you pepper them in, are they good just by themselves? Not so much. But if your VO2 max is a limiting factor, is it good to bring it up earlier? Yes. But there's many, many ways to bring up VO2 max, not just through intervals, right? So, and intervals do a whole lot more than bring up VO2 max. So I would say this is one of these things where what is called the technique of VO2 max intervals is much more complicated and does a whole lot more than just bring up your VO2 max. And it's important to see it all in part of a big picture, which might not be very efficient unless you hire a coach who can actually program for you and explain everything to you.
And the thing with the mile run specifically is that it's really like an anaerobic work capacity test. Like how hard can you go and tolerate for a relatively
you have to have a minimum VO2 max for sure.
Exactly right. So the idea of training solely to increase your VO2 max is good to a point. I would say if you're in like the 50s, you're probably good in mils per kg per minute. You're probably good. And they've actually demonstrated this very well with endurance athletes, where after around 60-ish, VO2 max no longer predicts anything. And then you see a lot of other variables becoming more and more important. And because the mile run, like I said, is an anaerobic work capacity, it's basically like the Wingate version of a running test. It's pretty awful. I think that it's less bang for your buck at some point. So outside of just being generally aerobically fit, after that,
Yeah. Number two, also you guys mentioned regarding my mile training in terms of specificity for a mile that as I get closer to my testing time, I should do more and more trial type runs. My question on that is, what would they look like? Should I run a full mile at X percent of my last one, mile or X percent of a mile at my target mile pace, or maybe something else entirely? I think a combination of those two is a really good thing. But again, this is one of those, like, I would just defer to a coach specializing in that kind of thing.
Yeah, you can use like percentage of race pace is exactly the same as using percentage of 1 rep max, just in a different setting, right? So you could take your best run pace that you had done in the previous test and use that as a scaling where you say, okay, I want to maintain, a 6:05 pace or a 6:15 pace or something like that. And that's your run. And then you can progressively make that harder.
Yep. And there's strategies to come at it from both perspectives, like you sort of allude to, Brandon. Like, so you could do like a mile 0.2 at a pace that's 95% as fast as your mile pace, but it's longer. And then you could do like 1,200 meters instead of 1,600, but do it at a 1.1 mile pace, right? 110% mile pace or something. And you could sort of inch in to the mile. You can even just do trial runs of the mile itself. For psychological reasons, it tends to be a bit of a tougher way to train, but there can be times where you do that, maybe once every week or once every 2 weeks. It really comes down to how you organize all that together, balancing volume and intensity and recovery. And I think somebody who's used to coaching folks like this is really going to be in the know about how to specifically do all that, because it all looks good on paper unless you combine various elements that don't go well together. And really only a good coach would know which one of those don't work.
Yeah, and unfortunately, this is kind of somewhere in between, like kind of traditional sports training and endurance training. Like, neither of those models fit the 1 mile perfectly, because one is more anaerobic, one is more endurance. Like I said, the anaerobic capacity is that unfortunate middle ground where it's like, it's hard to train.
Number 3, just to clarify, I didn't get the 5:18 mile at 180, but about 151. And I'm at about 162 now.
Yeah, no, that's a big difference. Hold on, wait a minute. Yeah, that's a big difference.
Okay. 162 now, currently massing, thanks to the past 4 months being inconsistent on running training due to very long distance move. Outside of the gym injury and illnesses, I know I'm not capable of that at the moment, but still very likely sub 6. And James, I appreciate your advice from last week as well regarding teaching. I just didn't know you were a professor before, so my bad on that.
Oh, no worries. I'm glad it was helpful.
Number 4, in regard to powerlifting targeted training during hypertrophy mesos, I imagine trying to maximize hypertrophy in all the recommended rep ranges is likely violating the principal specificity to a degree. It is. Please correct me if I'm wrong here. For powerlifting as opposed to bodybuilding, I normally stick to 12 reps, dropping down towards 7 reps per set as the meso progresses, and repeating for second meso at slightly higher weights. It seems fine. James and I would say 10 reps to 5 reps. I've yet to do 3 mesos in one massing phase due to weight gain after 2 mesos severely hampering running training. And I was wondering if maybe this could be a bad idea to stay in these relatively low rep ranges for my hypertrophy mesos. Not necessarily. Better for powerlifting to stay in them. It's been giving me great results in terms of getting the size I need to keep my driving up my lifts, but I don't want to unknowingly destroy my joints or be leaving gains on the table with leaving out the other rep ranges. I don't think there are any other rep ranges if you're wanting to have maximum transfer to powerlifting.
Yeah, and luckily you won't be unknowingly destroying anything. It should be painfully clear if it's not working.
Painfully clear is a good one, James.
See, master of puns. Yeah, so I wouldn't sweat that there's like some like hidden thing that you're missing that's going to fuck you over later here. I think if you're starting to have knee pain, like address it. If you're starting to have hip and back pain from the pounding, like address it. You know what I mean? It won't creep up on you out of nowhere.
All right, here we go. Luciano Bruno Kuschel says, hello, docs. I hope both of you are doing well and have been having a good first of the year of 2020. Yep. Thank you so much. I have a question regarding RP programming for physique goals. I'm an intermediate lifter and been using RPs for multiple years, but I can't seem to accurately judge RP on most exercises and rep ranges above 10. Okay. No matter what I can just keep on grinding reps with good form and it becomes more of a mental task. I will tell you right now that statement is false, because that means you have an ability to do an infinity amount of reps with anything more than you're trying to run, which is wrong. At some point you will stop. We'll get to that in a second. I'm picking on you on purpose, Luciano, because I know you can take it, but it's not, you can't just keep grinding at reps. That's incorrect. This happens to me every final week of a meso. I think this is inconsistent / too low RPs is largely why my volumes become so inflated throughout the mesos. Totally agreed. Yeah. My goal for the next meso is to take a step back from RP and follow a more rigid rep goal scheme. I don't think that is the best idea. I'll explain why in a sec. This is a benefit that I find it mentally much easier to aim for a rep goal and try to hit that rep goal with good form and not worry about assessing RPEs. Okay, that's a good benefit. This means that I'm aiming to hit the upper rep range, 5 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30 with every set, and stopping when I hit a technical 9.5 to 10 RPE. I imagine that weekly weight set increases will come at a slower rate. Fatigue will be higher and my volume landmarks will be lower. This all means that the mesos might have to be shorter. Do you have any programming tips or considerations for non-RP physique training? Yes. I don't ever do RP physique training. I do RIR physique training. RP is a fucking total waste of time with physique because so first of all, the 10 RPE scale, I believe was made up by, invented, popularized by Mike Teixeira. Traditional RPE in aerobic sports is actually on a scale of 6 to 20.
Which is like a shitty scale.
It's a shitty scale. So I tell you exactly why it's made like that, James. It's made exactly to mirror heart rate.
Yeah, right. But it's like it's not relatable.
Yeah, it's like, I'm a 17. Like, is that good or bad? Like, so 1 to 10 is definitely better. Mike Teixeira improved the fuck out of that. Mike Teixeira will be the first person to tell you that scale is for powerlifting and strength sport. It's not for physique sport. In physique sport, RIR is way, way better than RPE because listen, if you do 27 reps and you maybe could have done 30, I don't know. Like, it's really hard. What is that RPE? I'm not sure, right? I don't even bother thinking about RPE.
The thing
it's RIR. That's what matters.
In physique sports, it's kind of hard to judge an RPE because you're having the combination of assessing the intensity and the volume, right? Yeah. Where it's like, well, I did, 5 sets of, 10 to 20. So we'll say like on average 15 reps. It's like, yeah, the weight wasn't that heavy, but 5 sets of 15 fucking sucks. Like that's it's like, which one, how do you evaluate that? If you look at intensity, it's kind of low, but if in terms of total effort, it's pretty high.
Yeah. And so it really becomes like volume combined with RIR is the best way to do physique. Well, I'll tell you this is, I think your on second thought, your process of just aiming for stroke rep goals, I think is totally fine. I think we can do one better. From experience, you're essentially telling us that you're underestimating your RIRs, or essentially you think you're at 2 RIR, but you're really at a 4.
Right.
I think you should start your next meso and just push it a little harder on the first microcycle, and then try to match those reps every single microcycle after, while increasing weight, or add a rep or 2 every single microcycle while keeping the weight the same, so that you're forced to go harder and harder and harder, and you start at a guess that is harder than you have typically been used to. You will get to failure. You will find your true RIR of 0, and then you'll know much better what it feels like to go RIR actually 3 versus pretend 3 and it's really 6. So just go harder your first week and match or exceed all of the performances after that until you hit your MRV, and by definition, you can't match or exceed. That is a much better idea than to do RP. I hate RP for physique sports because fatigue can really fuck you over. Everything starts to feel like a 10. Then you're like, oh, I'm overreached. But then you look at your performance, and your performance is just fine. You're not overreached. You're actually just fine. Or you're saying everything feels fine, but you've been losing performance metrics for like 3 weeks. Well, if you did RIR and you tried to match your reps, you would quickly find out you're underperforming. So RPE, very, very limited for physique sports. I would use RIR. Your problem is your RIR estimates are just too far off. So grind it a little further. Do 2 or 3 extra reps at the end of every set when you think you're already done in your first week, and see how that meso goes. And if the meso goes shittily, then you are actually doing a fine job. If the meso goes much better and really well, then yeah, great. Then you learned a lesson, and your lesson is to push it a little bit harder than you think you can go in your first weeks. James?
Yeah, I think Mike's recommendation is really, really spot on there. Most people struggle with RIR for a little while until they really start pushing that RIR of 1, or ultimately go to failure on accident when they didn't mean to. And that's when you really get a good idea of what that maximal effort on that movement feels like. So I suspect, and you kind of already alluded to this yourself, you're just undershooting it so much and you really aren't familiar with what the true maximal effort is. Because if you just keep getting reps indefinitely, you're probably way, way, way undershooting what you could be doing. And so I would encourage you, like in a controlled, systematic way, trying to really find like a true 1 from fail or 0 from fail on your main movements. For a lot of people, as Mike would say, it's a religious experience, right? It's hard. It fucking sucks. But that's the best way to really scale up where you stand on a lot of these movements, because until you do that, you're going to be in this particular kind of limbo zone where you're like, I'm doing something, but it's probably not quite as good as it could be.
Mm-hmm. Connor Gann says, hey docs, I have a few questions for this week. Number 1, I get a lot of cross stimulus in my entire back from doing stiff legged deadlifts and 6 to 10 rep range squats. Occasionally, this will result in soreness leading into the next day after training back. Should I worry about this at all? Yes. Well, not worry. You should attend to it.
Yeah.
My back is probably my best body part and is really easy to stimulate. Well, that's good. For instance, I get a lat pump just from washing dishes. Holy fuck,
my
you're a
man.
freak.
You should
Connor,
wash
you're
more
a
dishes.
freak. Seriously, fucking just wash dishes. Get a job washing dishes. We'll make money and have a big back. What I would say in response to this is if your back is not something you want to get, like if it's just no problem growing whatsoever, you can train legs before back and you'll be totally fine. It'll be worse training by a little bit, but your back gets jacked anyway, so who gives a shit? And if you really want to prioritize your legs, that's a good way to put it. If you really want to prioritize your back, I would say don't train your legs right before back or give a day or two between the two, and then it works out much better because then your back's not sore. But like this is something like when James and I in various courses used to teach program design, interference effects are one of the main ways you design programs. Like so for example, someone said like, I saw this guy's program once and he was like, I'm doing squat Monday, bench Tuesday, deadlift Wednesday, and then I take the rest of the week off. And I'm like, you're a fucking idiot. But it's like,
amazing program. I love it.
Yeah. Listen, like on paper, it looks fine until you realize that by the time Wednesday hits, you're a fucking useless mess and what you call a deadlift isn't a deadlift anymore. It's like a warm up for a bent row. So it's just interference effects is a thing. And if you can move your workout around a little bit to minimize that, that would be great. So like, for example, if you do legs Monday currently and you're doing back Tuesday, move back to Wednesday or Thursday, right? Another thing to do is most of the way that your back is going to get hit in stiff legged deadlifts and squats is your spinal erectors and a lot of the muscles around the spine, traps, so on and so forth. Your lats probably won't get hit much. So what you could do is in the back workout that comes after that leg workout, that heavy leg work, you can do mostly vertical pulling and a little bit of horizontal stuff. And then later in the week, when you're not sore from your leg stuff and your spinal erectors, etc., you can do more horizontal pulling. So that's another way to split it up. But if you don't really give a shit and you really want your legs to grow and your back's okay either way, then that's like a necessary evil you can absolutely accept and it won't cost you much.
Yeah, my recommendation was going to be the latter one that you gave. You can use the exercise selection to kind of play to the strengths and weaknesses of that scenario. Like don't do your bent over rows after those hard days, do the vertical stuff and then vice versa. Usually we have the other problem where like if you do bent rows, it tends to interfere with your ability to do leg training, right? Yes. And so now you have it going in both directions that you'll have to be conscious of, but play around with it a little bit. I've noticed that like, and I brought this up on webinars before, I can train my lats 4 or 5 times per week, just very easily if I chose to do so, but going up to 5 times per week definitely interferes with my posterior chain leg training days. So that's a compromise of interference that you have to figure out for yourself. And there's tons of examples of that.
Yeah. Number 2, in the past, before I found you guys, I wasted a lot of time dieting too long and rebounding. So the lowest I've been able to get down is just around 13 to 14%. Is it okay to mass from 13 to 18% for a while until I built a bit more muscle to hopefully make it easier to cut to 10%? My end goal is definitely to get 10% or below while being as big as possible. Currently about 5'7", 170. Yeah, I think that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with 13 to 18%. 15 is just a really, really rough figure, especially for competitors. But I think for non-competitors, up to 20% is totally fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so this one. Sorry.
So the first question, and then Brandon wants to help answer it, and then the second question, right?
Yeah, I think Brandon just chimed in with his
cool.
2 cents on the first one.
Cool. So Yordan Sanyev says, yes, I'm a Bulgarian indeed. Spot on, Mike, as I guess he was Bulgarian. Sweet. Hi, Docs. I heard you discussing The Hybrid Athlete by Alex Viada. I enjoyed the book very much and took some practical recommendations from it, but it did leave me with a theoretical quiz. Obviously, gaining muscle while also pursuing aerobic goals is possible. Aside from being a pain, what are some of the potential setbacks of doing a lot of cardio while massing? There's actually an entire given an entire lecture on this before, and there's an entire section of the upcoming hypertrophy book which talks about this.
And I don't want to be a dickhead about this too, but I feel like this is another one that we've kind of beaten to death. So I don't want to spend a ton of time on this one.
Yeah, brief summary. Worst P ratio, probably not, but a difficult overall ability to stimulate muscle mass. Maybe disproportionate muscle distribution, maybe. Cardio generally involves a lot of leg work. Yes, very bad for putting mass on your legs, right? Because catabolism from cardio directly burns muscle and inhibits muscle growth pathways. And adds fatigue. So it's basically those 3 things.
And if you did the upper body stuff like rowing or arm ergometry or something like that, same would apply.
Hurt upper body, yeah. I can imagine this would make lower body gains harder, and indeed it would. Any thoughts on this we would appreciate. Yeah, so you got direct pathway interference, direct catabolism, and then you have increase in fatigue and also calorie siphoning. Like, it's harder to gain. If you don't have problems gaining weight, the calorie siphoning thing is not a problem. But, if you have trouble gaining weight, you do more cardio, then you're just not gaining weight anymore, and that's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And then Brandon Armstrong wants to chime in, and he says, just in my experience with this here, my mild training doesn't seem to affect my leg strength gains too much unless I'm supposed to be a freak of nature and brought down to mortal gains by it. Yeah, that's probably true. I recently hit 162.5, 117.5, 197.5 high bar squat bench deadlift at 73 body weight, 179 centimeters. This is after a 14-week-long training cycle with gains of 8 kilograms in squat and 11 in the deadlift. My bench was 6.5 increase. As you can see, I'm nothing special and likely fall within the average of all areas. I've been training this way for about 3.5 years, but only progressing for about 2 of those years after taking a 4-year break from lifting during high school. I'd say that even though I still train for running, my leg strength increases aren't affected too much, at least in this point of my training career. I think they are affected. You just can't tell because if you plugged away running, you would gain better. That would be my thought. Not that I put too much stock in it for what it's worth. The app Systemic Strength says my bench is actually weak in relation to my other lifts instead of my squat or deadlift. That's probably almost entirely genetic. As for fat gain, I do seem to stay rather lean while massing, so that's really good. That's actually a benefit of the cardio. But my longest massing phase at this point has only been 7 weeks. I'll see how long it is I'll see how that is at the end of this massing phase I'm currently in. Yeah, so I would say that, almost every case endurance activity is going to blunt your gains. It might not blunt them to zero, and you might still get gains, but you're going to get better gains if you don't do it.
I think here's something to consider, and I think this is a very strong point, although you don't have to do this. If your goal is hypertrophy and you are in a hypertrophy phase, you should not be trying to gain cardiovascular fitness at this time. You should be trying to maintain the cardiovascular fitness that you currently have, which is actually going to be tough when you're gaining weight, right? Yep. It's going to feel worse. It's not tough. It's going to feel worse, right? So when you are on maintenance, or even when cutting to some degree, because in cutting, all you're really trying to do is maintain your muscle mass while decreasing your body fat. So you have a little more wiggle room there. But during your maintenance phases, it's a great time to really try and push up the cardio because your weight training stuff is down, right? A weight gain phase, like you want to be pouring as much of your training and recovery and calorie resources into gaining as much muscle as you can to make that the most efficient phase possible. Why are you trying to also gain cardiovascular fitness at this time? Maintain your cardiovascular fitness and then try and improve your cardio through the training and when you're on more maintenance style lifting, because you have more resources available. I think it's a bad strategy when people are like, Mike, I think this is when people are maybe, I don't want to say new to training, but maybe like relatively new, or they got re-inspired to do some harder training, get more on a structured schedule for training and diet. And they think, I'm going to do cardio. I'm going to do this hypertrophy thing. Like, pick one, get the most out of it as you can. What's the old saying? A samurai can't serve 2 masters, right? Serve 1 master, do a good job. And then you can always bring the other ones up later.
And from Jordan, it's P.S. A funny thing happens to me whenever I'm in the States. In almost every gym I've been, there will always be at least one guy who would be super stoked that he has finally found a fellow lifter from Bulgaria and finally demystify the original Bulgarian split squats, and then proceed to explain that I have no clue and not a single fucking person in Bulgaria does them. They all walk away dejected. I wonder if there's a Romanian out there crushing people's thirst for knowledge. Well, I'll tell you what, a lot of the Russian lifters, like Russian bodybuilders, you'd think periodization. Like, they don't know periodization. They literally just follow the bros and Rich Piana and see what they're doing. And you're just the biggest disappointment ever. Like, you go over there and you're like, Russians teach me things. And they come over here and they're like, Americans teach me things. Like, I've had American powerlifters or Russian powerlifters not associated with the Russian powerlifting team, just guys on their own, be like, oh man, I wonder what Louis Simmons is doing. I'm like, Jesus Christ, he was wondering what you're doing. What is going on? So,
hey, since we wrapped up these questions, before we move on to YouTube, Dr. Wife came back, and I'm going to probe her about that Satan question, if you don't mind.
Satan is Lord.
Hey, Mel, you want to hop over here?
Yeah.
So Dr. Davis does a lot of the research on vegan veggie stuff. So we had a question about the use of seitan and why we think it's one of the better veggie protein sources, even though it's mostly made of wheat gluten.
Because it's typically made with soy also, with soy sauce at least, most recipes, which adds the lysine that would be missing from the wheat protein.
Oh.
So pretty decent in terms of amino acid profile. And the digestibility is probably better than 0.25 just because it's so processed.
I think that was just the wheat reference.
Yeah. But it's probably not great still because it's wheat and wheat products.
James, can you tell Mel what I said about it, if it's right or wrong?
I don't remember what you said about it, to be honest. I forgot.
That one of the reasons we recommend it is because it's one of the
I can't
few
hear.
sources vegans have that is just mostly protein and not a lot else, and that's just so rare that it's like, hey, you get decent quality protein, but here's some fucking protein.
So Mike recommended it. He suggested one of the reasons why we recommend it is because it's one of the few vegan veggie sources that's just protein by itself, and it's not like a big fuss to program it in with other things.
Yeah, there's two reasons. There's that it doesn't have a lot of extra fat and carbs, so it's easy to add without messing up your macros if you're like later on in the diet. And also, it's one of the sources that typically has all of the essential amino acids in a decent ratios. So we tend to, in like the vegan templates, program protein at about 20% higher anyway. So the digestibility is taken into account as it is. So
boom.
Yeah.
All right. Change that game.
Satan.
Thank you, Dr. Wife. Appreciate your insight on that.
Praise his fucking name. All right.
What did he say?
So
he said, he said, praise his fucking name, referring to Satan.
All right, let's get going to answering some questions. I will now exit minimized video and share my screen. Let us begin doing nominally answering questions on YouTube, but what we're really doing is looking at the algorithm. Let's shout out XCIA, Senate impeachment trial. I've never clicked on it.
How I lost 100 pounds.
Amazing. All right. So let's pick one. Luis Carvalho. I think I know him from Facebook. All right. Carvalho. Hi, guys. Been following RP for a while, and I'm a big fan of Mike and James. I really thankful for all the awesome content you guys release, and can't wait for my personal book. You guys rock. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you.
I've been trying to implement volume progression for the first time ever on my current mass phase, and already feel the difference since I started to structure my workouts following the principles you guys give. Reducing exercise variation, I feel the technique improved, so my muscle connection. However, at the same time, I noticed I was losing reps from microcycle to microcycle. From a microcycle to another on back workout, especially in inverted rows. Could this be due to improvement on mind-muscle connection and technique, making it more effective on the muscle? Unlikely.
Well, it could be if you're like over-exaggerating, like peak contraction and like tempoing really slow. Like if you change your technique significantly to accommodate mind-muscle connection, then yes. If not, probably not.
Or is this straight up mistaking RIR? Maybe. A nutrition and rest feels fine, and I also have been recovering fine from one workout to another thanks in advance and greetings from Brazil. Oh, sorry about bad English and eventual mistakes. Dude, your English was fucking awesome. If half the people in America spoke English as well as you, would be off to a good start. I don't speak English. I speak American, goddammit.
Poha.
Poha caray. I guarantee he'll get a kick out of that. So, all right. So, here is the deal. You might just be hitting MRV. Another thing is your inverted rows might be so far down your back workout, it might be like the third exercise, that it's just accumulation of systemic fatigue. Another idea is, sorry, James. Go ahead.
Go for it. Go for it.
You might just be, because you said you're massing, you might just be getting big and fat and your inverted rows suck because it's body weight exercise. So
unless usually your gut gets bigger, so you don't have to pull it up as high, right? And so then then the performance goes up. I was going to say you might be having a similar problem to one of the other persons that came up on this webinar, where your leg training might just be improving so substantially that your back is toast from your like doing legs. That could be also another possibility.
Yeah. All right. Elijah Clifford says, what do you think about Greg O'Gallagher / Kino Body's theory that being able to lift more is a result of hypertrophy rather than hypertrophy being a result of lifting heavier? So it's mostly correct. So I'd say it's, first of all, not his, and second of all, not a theory, if I'm being a pedantic piece of shit. But on the real, Elijah, you lift more because you have bigger muscles. Lifting heavy in the 5 to 30 rep range gives you bigger muscles, but progressing from like 100 pounds to 105 pounds by 2.5 pound increments isn't what's adding the muscle. Each one of those workouts is stimulative. The only real reason we progress is to keep them optimally stimulated, because if you just keep repeating 100 pounds, your RIR starts to go up, which is to say you get further and further from failure, so the workouts aren't as hard anymore. So yeah, it's mostly correct.
And then just to add in there's plenty of opportunities to get stronger without hypertrophy as well. So that would be a very short-sighted thing to not exclude, to exclude neural adaptations. And to the latter point, hypertrophy resulting from lifting heavier. Yeah, some of that occurs. Like as you get stronger, you can get a bigger stimulus, like more intensity from some of the stuff you're doing. But that's not one of the key driving forces here, whereas like the volume progressions and stuff are. So to a much lesser extent on the latter point.
Yep. Last question of the day from Evan Polako. A man seemingly using his real name on YouTube. Bravery.
Is this picture just like a straight shot on his crotch right there?
Yeah, fuck yeah, it's this dick.
It's just like dick front and center.
Can you see my mouse?
Yeah. It's like, that's what I'm like, why are you wearing shorts at this point? Just put it out there.
Put your dick on YouTube. All right. Is there any merit? That's going on a t-shirt for sure. Is there any merit wearing a weightlifting belt for bicep curls or other isolations? I saw Mike Israel doing it at lateral raises with one on Facebook. Was he trolling? So first of all, I don't ever troll.
Who is he trolling?
Myself. Also, I never understand. So this is like, okay, I understand what trolling means, but this is just an interesting tangent I would like to go on for about 2 minutes. I think the idea of trolling is like you're joking around, but like my sister always tells me when I'm not funny, but I'm saying a joke, jokes have to be funny. Like guys will go on like Instagram and be like, hey, Dr. Mike, you're a piece of shit. And someone's like, why would you say that? And they're like, I'm just trolling. And they'll be like, what's so funny about that? They're like, I don't know. And it's just like, you're not trolling. You're just a fucking idiot with no goddamn sense of humor. But anyway, now that I'm quite upset about this, really good question. Weightlifting belts can increase your intra-abdominal pressure, which can allow you to neurologically exert more force or more neural drive to the muscles and thus create more external force. If your core is already tight enough and you're lifting a relatively small amount of weight, it makes no difference at all. If you're lifting large amounts of weights and there is a large component of core stability that is required, then it helps. So people who wear a belt on bench presses, it's largely for no good reason at all. A belt on lat pull downs makes almost no sense, right? Big belly bench, yep. But if you wear a belt on squats, deadlifts, etc., overhead presses, good idea. For me, I'm doing lateral raises, time to brag, with like 50, 55 pounds.
But with a limp wrist, so it doesn't count.
Right, that's right. That's right. Limp wristed. It's funny because there's like a homosexual slur there as well somewhere. That didn't even ever occur to me. So honestly, those fucking dumbbells feel so goddamn heavy to me subjectively that when I wear the belt, they feel lighter and I straight up get more reps. I wouldn't put the belt on cosmetically just because I'm like, oh, here's a belt, right? It helps. It legitimately helps me because of intra-abdominal pressure. So, like, if you're when I upright row, when I do bent upright rows with like the 20s or 25s, I don't fucking wear a belt because it makes no difference. And actually, the belt makes breathing a little harder, and you're like, fuck, this is uncomfortable, and actually maybe reduces your performance. But if you're lifting something really, really hard, it really requires a lot of core activation, which if you try a lateral raise in the 55s, you will quickly see that it's stupid. I hate it. It's so weird because I'm like, I'm not supposed to be able to do this. And then it moves, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Like, I'll pick them up to warm up with, and I'm like, what?
No.
So, yeah, so basically, I do it because it helps. That's it. And on curls, easy curls, for some reason, tax my core a lot. I don't know why. And it helps a ton. And then for like cable curls, it doesn't help at all, so I don't wear them. And sometimes on heavy cable curls, it does. So really, really specific to if the intra-abdominal pressure is really helping you, do it. If it's not, don't fucking do it.
Mike, would you ever consider getting the arm blaster belt?
Only to look like 1970s Arnold.
Yes, I love it.
Yes, look at me. My veins are so huge.
Every now and again, I'll go into a gym and they'll have one laying around, and I'm like, I got to use this. It's just too novel. It's too silly. I just have to go for it. And you're like, fucking.
I've used it last in high school. I remember it was pretty cool. It sure as hell isolates the muscle.
Yeah, it does a good job. I mean, it's just like a funny, goofy thing. By the way, you mentioned Sonia. Shout out to Sonia because she helped me out in a big way recently. Somehow my work RP Google Drive got wiped. And it had some like very important things on there. And luckily she was able to recover that data for me. So that was a big, big save. So shout out to Sonia for saving the day. Sonia.
Well, James, I think that's it.
Yeah, that was a good one, man. It feels like we went for like 2 hours there. Holy cow.
I don't usually go for 2 hours, if you know what I mean.
Maybe collectively.
I'm what's called that's you going 2 hours, 1 hour, 59 minutes and 30 seconds, and me going 30 seconds. That's it. Oh, that's the greatest. That's the greatest thing you've ever done, James. I'll forever remember you with that.
As that guy. All
Because,
right. Well,
just to explain, that is the most possible disappointing kind of sex that simultaneously results in intravaginal ejaculation, but also zero pleasure for the woman. It's
yes.
like zero out of
Possibly
zero.
even pain, right? That first one is like, maybe,
Yeah, like, ooh. And then he's like, that's it. And she's like, did you wear a condom? You're like, nope.
nope.
Like,
And I'm
well,
done.
I officially hate you.
Do you have any sandwiches?
I'm hungry.
All right. Well, on that note, folks, we're going to wrap it up this week. Thanks for tuning in. We had actually had a bunch of really good questions. Yeah. If you want to get your questions answered, you can join RP Plus and submit your questions that way. If you enjoy all the content that we've been putting on the RP YouTube channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button, and hopefully we'll see you next time.
Peace.